Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jesse? Do you see?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
You like it like that over there, huh?
Yeah, I like it. It's nice.
I can see how much fun you have. Right, I'm just going to chime in here. This is the beginning of the podcast. It's podcast 116, and we had to have Jesse's accent on it. So, Callie, I'm going to let you lead this. Just say some words.
So, Jesse, give me a couple of words. Obviously, we love your accent. So say something like aluminium.
Aluminum?
Aluminum? I nearly said it wrong.
Aluminum,
We did. Tomato.
Tomato?
Come here.
Come here.
And then when you get really annoyed with me, it's go away.
Oh, go and get.
In my brain, I think you're like the greatest country and western singer ever.
Oh, goodness.
Did he sing?
No.
He sings thrash metal.
Is he?
He sings that kind of where you think that,
grungy.
That's what
Well, we've introduced Jesse because we talk a little bit about him throughout the podcast. So there's Jesse. Thank you very much for coming in and sitting on the podcast. We've got 3 hours to go.
Yeah, it's gonna be good times. Grow your own.
So you get you just to come in and do like the little jingles.
Happy Sunday, listeners. It's podcast 216 with myself, Stephen, and there's no Barry this week. We have got the special guest, Callie Blackwell. We've kept it a little bit under wraps because we're actually back with our video team. This is one of the first ones post-COVID lockdown that we've managed to video. And me or Barry explained the change of scenery. We've got a lot to tell you over the coming weeks. But I'm very happy. Callie, we've been talking for years, and it's been years. Callie's very busy. So today is the day. It's a Saturday. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm nice. It's nice to finally be here.
I know.
But yeah, it has been like literally 2 years that we've been talking about getting this done. And then just our ships, like ships in the night. We just never kind of...
I know. Always missed each other. But I'm very excited. If you've got stuff to do this morning, this evening, this afternoon, either cancel or come back to the podcast because this is going to be a long one. So first of all, before we hit the intro, we've got to say thank you very much to the partners of the podcast. We've got to say thank you very much to CANNA Nutrients. Now, CANNA, me and Callie were just talking before. Callie is vegan and CANNA do the bio range, which is completely vegan. So if you listen to the podcast specifically because Callie's on it and you're a vegan or you're a vegetarian and you put that effort into your growing, CANNA bio range is the range that you need to use. AutoPots, this is another thing. Now, I might get into sustainability and veganism with Callie, but AutoPot, a big part of being vegan is sustainability and keeping the planet in mind. So with that in mind, we have AutoPot watering systems, no electricity, bottom fed, one of the best performing systems on the planet. It's a global system. Give them a follow, a very good system to use. And with the new valve that they've just come out with, you can use CANNA Bio. It won't block, so you can have vegan nutrients with a system that doesn't use electricity. Nice. You're absolutely off to a flying start. Then we have SANlights. Now, SANlights, they do use electricity, but they're very efficient. So these are the LEDs, one of the best selling LED in our shop, and it's flying out on the shelves in the shops around the UK. Very efficient, so they use less electricity than HPS, and another good choice if you need that little bit of extra power from your lights. Then you have fan and filters. They have everything you need with extraction, intakes, filtration. Go and follow them. Check out the website. They've got all the products online, and you can see what they've got to fit your needs. We also have Gavita. So the number one 1,000 watt, 6750, 600 watt, double-ended, single-ended, ceramic metal halides. Gavitas have been the number one for a long time, and there's good reason for it. Very, very good brand of lighting. And last but by no means least, Garden Culture magazine. Very good magazine, the best in the industry, and go and check it out. Next week we'll be doing our garden culture review. So if you're a first-time listener, because Callie's here, please do give us a follow and check out next week's Garden Culture magazine, all about sustainability, how to grow your own food, using hydroponics as a method. So go and pick that up from any shop and you'll be in for a good read. Let's go to intro and then we'll crack on with the podcast.
All good? Ready to go? Turn my voice up a little bit. Oh, got that. Everyone watching, the whole family.
Barry built in the house that I built, in the booth that I built.
I know people tune in every Sunday to listen, but even when business is good, we still manage to do the podcast.
Well, sit down. I hope you've got a cup of tea or a bottle of water. We're in for I've called it a fireside chat. This is my fire.
It's nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot safer than a fire.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
It does. Then it gives a nice ambience.
Yeah, I like it. I love all of this. It's nice.
Do you like it?
Yeah,
It's
I do feel like I was saying earlier, it's like I'm waiting for Joe Rogan to walk in. It's like,
yeah. It's very Joe Rogan inspired.
Yeah, I like it.
It's real brick. Don't ruin the effect, Callie. Go with it. It's real brick.
Yeah,
Barry built it brick by brick. It's actually
well done, Barry.
Yeah, he's done very well. He joined it that well that you can't even see the wallpaper marks.
I love it. Use really old bricks as well to give it
know.
that rustic. I like it.
Yeah. So listen, let's get into it because it could. We've got a lot to talk about. I want to start with the book first. Actually, that's what we were talking about before. So I can actually hold this up now because we are filming. The Boy in 7 Billion, Callie Blackwell and Karen Hockney. Been out for a long time.
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years. Yeah. My mum loves Callie. And
I love your mum.
which talk was it that she went to?
The one at Indigo Greens.
Indigo Greens, yeah. She raved about it. She said, what a lovely lady you were. Absolutely loved it. And I've said this to you on the phone as well. Now, if you don't know Callie, you will know a lot by the end of the podcast. I'm not going to give some sort of speech about her. You'll know everything at the end of the podcast. But my mum, Callie's a cannabis activist, and my mum was very anti just drugs, not cannabis, just anti-drugs. Yeah. And as my education increased and I learned a lot more, I started telling my mum, and it took years and years. And it seemed to be you were the trigger though, because we did, it wasn't a podcast, but she saw you at an event and I've mentioned you to her. I've said, you've got to read the book. She's read the book. She went to one of your talks and my mum was like a different person then. She was like, I can't believe it's not a medicine.
Yeah. Why is it illegal?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? How should we start?
And you've completely U-turned my mum. So if you can U-turn my mum, you can U-turn anybody because she was staunch. She was very, it's bad. She just reeled off all the negatives that people always come out with. Yeah. And you've completely U-turned her and she's made up. She read this book in 8 hours. She's an avid reader anyway, but she loved it and I loved it. It's I said to you before, didn't I? Page turn is a corny word, but it really is. From the first page, you're in.
Yeah, it's what I was going for as well when I was writing it. I actually had my intention was to have it as something that people couldn't put down because I wanted people to get to the end. I needed people to understand fully why I did what I did, you know. And so as I was writing it, I wanted people to be really invested and to kind of feel what I felt. So in some way, when I was writing, I had to actually go back and experience those feelings again. I had to relive them again. And so I actually had quite a hard time writing it. I had to take some time off during the kind of putting together of it because I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like I've already been through this once. So it was cathartic in a way, but it was difficult in another. But I really wanted to capture how I felt. And I knew that to get people not just to agree with what I did, but to go, yeah, I would have done that. I needed them to understand the backstory, you know. And I also knew, because obviously Darren being so rare, he'd already been in the newspapers. He already had quite a large following on social media. And I knew what the media were like. I'd already been in the newspapers a number of times and I'd already seen them twist my words. And I was like, if I come out and say, actually, I gave him cannabis and I don't have it there in my words in black and white there for nobody to twist my words, I knew that the media would have a field day with me and I would not be able to undo all of the work that they would do. You know, it'd be trying to, you know, shut the door after the horse has bolted. So I figured I needed, before I came out as such, that I needed to have everything there in my words so I could go, there's my words. You want there they are. Don't twist them.
You can quote that book.
You can quote them, exactly. Yeah. So So yeah, I came out with that, and I mean, my intention as well was also to kind of try and turn people's ideas, because I wasn't really anti-cannabis. I was anti-drugs. I was a bouncer for many years.
Yeah.
So it was literally my job to take drugs off people, then grass them up to the police and and write a report and take great pleasure in it. That was my job for a long time. And so I knew that I'd had my whole idea of cannabis completely changed when I saw what it did to my son. Completely changed. It blew my mind. And so I knew that I had to convince other people. And the best way to do that was to give them a story that's true and that they could all feel themselves, mothers, fathers, anybody, even people, that don't have children can still at some way understand what it was like. And then to see cannabis do what it did, I don't think anybody can read that story and say, oh no, cannabis is bad. Shouldn't have done that.
No, they can't.
You can't, can you? Because, okay, what was the alternative? I should have let him die because of a law.
Yeah.
No, that's not any law that I need to adhere to if it means that people are going to die. And the more that I saw, cannabis, the more that I saw what the government had been telling us, it was like, it just became my drive to prove to everybody that cannabis wasn't something to be scared of, and that, actually prohibition is the problem. And with your mum, it's her conditioning. It's the conditioning that they've all had from a very young age. Reefer madness, cannabis is bad, and we know why now. It's to keep people away from it because it actually works and it actually causes very little harm.
Yeah.
So
we all grew up right through the proper concentrated period where it was people were really going for it.
Yeah.
Darren, he was 14. Tell us a little bit about Darren.
Yeah, so he was 10 when he was first diagnosed. Fairly normal kid beforehand, really fit and healthy, avid rugby player, really good at jiu-jitsu. He was great. He had his whole life ahead of him and a load of potential, and then hit by leukemia at 10. And he did really well, actually. He did do fairly well. He had a lot of time in hospital still, and he spent 4 years really in and out of hospital, with a 2-year period where he was literally in isolation for 2 years. And that was, in a really prevalent time of his life, going through puberty and all of that, 10 to 14, it's the life of a boy out on his bike with his mates, learning the pecking order. And there he was in a room by himself. And all he had was his PlayStation. And then, another cancer at 12, and then bone marrow transplants at 13. And then, he was given the news that you've got 3 days to live just after his 14th birthday. And, I didn't think, I knew back then that it would eventually take its toll on him. He thought that he was absolutely fine with it all. He thought that it hadn't taken its toll. It's only now, really, that he's now in therapy and he's now speaking to psychiatrists. And it was actually funny when he went to see his first therapist, she kind of listened to his story and she said, my God, I think I need therapy now, after it. And she said, I don't know how you're still standing. And he's like, well, it's a while ago now, but 6.5 years after it all, he's now starting to see that there are issues there. He has mental health issues that have come from, chronic, he's got quite severe PTSD from a lot of the things he's been through. And I imagine, facing your own death, facing your own funeral and having that all planned out and then it not happening, really threw him. But he's getting through it, and he deals with it. I'm so proud of him because he's not doing what a lot of people do, which is suppressing it and saying, oh, there's nothing wrong, it's okay. Yeah. It's, because that's where we really harbour things and then it causes issues in years to come. So he's dealing with it head on and I'm really proud of him.
It's not just, though, that he had to accept what he thought was going to happen. He actually dealt with it and he planned his own funeral.
Yeah.
And so not just coming to terms with it, actually accepting it and then planning your own funeral and then it not happening. Just, even though it's people think, obviously, how can you have mental health issues because you thought you were going to die and you didn't. And so everything's great.
Yeah.
But there's a psychological thing, and I'm no expert at all, but when you come to accept something, even as radical as death, when it doesn't happen, it has a massive impact on you. And you've got to come to terms with then living. Yeah. You understand that this is going to be the end. Then you've got to come to terms with, actually, it's not. And now I've got to look forward. Now you've got to recalibrate your whole brain to, I'm going to live. And it does. It has a massive impact on
it
people.
Didn't help that the doctors, they didn't really know what to do with him. But I even said to them, so is he now going to get better? Or what are we looking at? And they were like, don't know, he could drop down dead next week. We've no idea. And they said that in front of him. And he was like, So he's in limbo, you know, and he still felt like crap. You know, he didn't feel great. His organs were still, you know, not working effectively. And it was the road to recovery was to him insurmountable. It was huge. It was just, he looked at that. And I mean, he says to me that, and he said it in a few interviews himself, that he was literally stood on the threshold of a door where everything was promised to him. The end of suffering, the end of pain, the end of all this 4 years of what he'd just been through. No more prodding, no more poking, no more medication, or everything, all, you know, brilliant. And then someone slams the door and you have to turn around and it's hell. And it's like, not yet, go back to that. It's like, I don't want to go back to that, you know. It's like, and then the whole thing of, well, am I going to live? Well, we don't know. So it's like, well, I'd rather be dead, thanks, now than this and the prodding and the poking and the more tests and the back in the hospital situation where the hospital had kind of let him go. They then dragged him back in and it just all became too much for him. And that 6-month period was actually the hardest 6 months of our entire lives together, really, because that 6 months was when he was trying to kill himself and because he just couldn't get his head around it. And we did have people who were like, what a selfish young man, you know, how dare he's had this second chance of life and he doesn't want it. And I'm like, it's not that he doesn't want it. He's been told for however long that he is going to die and now he's go out and live. How do you do that? You know, and for a 14-year-old boy who at the time, you know, they wouldn't even give him any mental health care because they said he didn't qualify. So they wouldn't even give him that at the time. You know, they wanted to section him, force feed him, sedate him and do all these things to him. And I said, you know, mental health care? No, he doesn't qualify. It's like, what?
No.
You know, how low does one have to be to get some care? And so, yeah, there's a massive failing within the NHS. And I don't blame the NHS. I don't blame the NHS at all. I blame the people much higher up that run it and are trying to run it as a business. It's not a business, it's healthcare. And unfortunately, the people who suffer are those people that are stuck in the system, either going through cancer treatment or any other treatment where they're just left and then they don't really know what to do with them. You know, their toolboxes are sadly lacking in a lot of things, mental health care and also cannabis and other plant medicines that we know now that we can utilise for other things. You know, so hopefully one day, you know, that's a whole nother one we can go down that road.
Well, talking about how cannabis saved Darren, his white blood cells, this is something that really interests me. If you've been a long time listener of the podcast, you'll know that I'm the science one and I love anything that's science. And unfortunately, science fails people a lot of the time. But the good thing about it is proper science understands that it doesn't know everything, so it keeps on trying to learn. And good science will understand what cannabis can do and make it available for people. One of the things I wanted to ask is that is white blood cells increased? Now, there's a lot of research going into cannabis now, and there's people that are into this sort of area will know what it's good for. One of the things that I would never have said in a million years is cannabis will increase somebody's white blood cells from 0 to something. What's happened there? Have you done research? Was it just the miracle of cannabis?
So I haven't actually gone and done any research into the immune system really about it, but I have seen, I tend to, I mean, I maybe should do more research, but I find myself so bogged down just with dealing with everyday people. So I take my information and from what I see, the feedback I'm getting from real people, that to me is my research. Yeah. And so I've seen many people over the years with not necessarily immune system issues like Darren had, but obviously when they're going through cancer treatment, their immune systems are depleted because the chemotherapy absolutely, you know, eradicates all of that. And so they have seen positive, every single one of them has seen an increase in their immune system, in their white cells, you know. So I don't know the science of why it's happening. All I know is that we've got an endocannabinoid system and that regulates everything. And so if there's something amiss, it's going to go there. Yeah. And so to see, I mean, I never for a million years thought that's what was going to happen. I'd been given a syringe of cannabis oil actually the previous October, which I then gave to somebody else because I didn't know what to do with it and I didn't know what it was. And Darren didn't have cancer, so what was the point, you know? And but when it got to that point, it was like, oh, you know, I'd made this tincture and I just give it to him. And I literally just gave it to him to eradicate what the suffering that he was going through at the time, which was the night terrors and the sleeplessness and the when he was awake, it was, well, when am I going to die? How long is, you know, I'm sick of waiting now. I feel so, I just want to go. And we had the conversation of me putting a pillow on his face. We've had the conversation about suicide and euthanasia and all of these things. And so, you know, he was getting just pretty desperate, and he was just having night terrors, and they were trying to put more morphine into him, but he'd stated specifically, I do not want to die on morphine. They were trying to give him sleeping tablets to just basically sedate him through the anxiety associated with dying. And he didn't want to be numbed from it all. So I was like, I'll just give him this cannabis because it chills you out, right?
Yeah.
And it really chilled him out. And that's all I expected. That's all I wanted. It already was going to give him the death that we all deserved. And yeah, 5 days later, when the bandages came off his fingers and his fingers were healthy, and they were like, this is impossible. I was like, well, clearly not. And they were like, we need to do a blood test. And I said, well, 5 days ago, you did a bone marrow aspirate, which is they take a big thick needle and they screw it into the actual ball joint. And that's where they take a sample out of there, because that is the most accurate way of seeing what's going on. Nothing. So it's definitely not going to be in his blood 5 days later. Yeah. And there it was, you know, this blood count, and it has gone up by, you know, it increased by like, I don't know how many times. It went from 0.0005 to 0.25 in those 5 days. And that they couldn't get their head around it. There's nothing they'd given him. You know, I was asking them, is there anything you gave him? No, there's nothing that can do this. There's nothing we have in our toolbox that can do this. Oh, okay then. I think I know what it is. And I was like, you know, I couldn't say anything at the time. I wasn't going to put my children at risk at the time because, you know, Dylan was still only 9. And it was, social services are a very real thing. It's and I'd heard too many, you know, horror stories already of people in America who'd lost their children because they were trying to, you know, alleviate suffering and stuff. And I thought, no, I'm not yet. No, I'm not saying anything.
How long did it take you then between you thinking, I know exactly what's done this, and telling the first doctor or the first nurse or the first person that was outside of the family?
I rang his doctor, his first oncology doctor, who I knew. I had a very good relationship with him. But he hadn't dealt with Darren for a couple of years. But I rang him the day before I went on this morning, and I went, I'm going on the telly tomorrow and you might see it. And this is what I did. I wanted you to know before you saw it on the TV. So yeah, it took about 3 years. Yeah. 2 years, about 2 years. Because I was just, I mean, but in that time I was still helping people, but I was helping people very secretly. And I wasn't that out, you know, coming out that much about what I'd done. But those people that were in a similar situation to me, I was like, I gave them cannabis, you know, maybe you should look at doing the same, and I can help you. I can get you in touch with the people that helped me. And so I was you know, I was quietly helping people, and whilst writing my book and stuff and getting everything, you know, lined up, and to the point where I knew I could come out. And I knew when I came out, I had to come out in a big way as well. So I had to go on something like This Morning, or, you know, I had to do that. I couldn't just come out and go, oh, hello, I gave Darren cannabis. Because I would have just been swamped and monstered by maybe even the authorities. You know, I really do feel that the fact that I was so out and so brazen and here's a book which nobody can deny and nobody can argue with me over, I felt that in some way was my protection. You know, that I thought, well, come on then, come and arrest me. Are you really going to arrest me now with this? Because this would be ridiculous. You're going to arrest me for saving my son's life. Okay, this will be interesting. But they've never come. And you know, touch wood, I hope they never do, because I don't want to have to go down that road. I don't want to have to. I will if I have to, if I'm forced down there, but I don't want to have to pull all this out. And because I think cannabis is out of the bag now. We all know what cannabis does now. You know, even people like your mum and grannies who would have never had anything to do with it are like, well, you know, I know a story of a boy, or I know a story, my, you know, such and such. Everyone knows someone now that's been helped by cannabis. So really, they can't keep lying and telling us that it's illegal when we know it's a licensing issue. Yeah. You know, when I went on This Morning, it had no medicinal benefit. Yeah. And that was at the time it had no medicinal benefit. The government were like, no. And I think about 4 or 5 months after I went on This Morning, it was like, well, actually it does have medicinal benefit. And it's like, oh, really? No shit, Sherlock.
You can see it. You can see it in Darren's eyes when I think it's Philip says, and this, or Philip or Holly said, this is it's a class B. It's got no medicinal benefits. And the camera goes onto Darren. You can just see him go, in his head, he just wants to go, bullshit. You can just see it in his eyes. Go,
because I don't hide it as well. I was like,
it's just like, I'm here. Yeah. Like, that's all the proof that you need. Yeah. If it helps one person, it is medicinal. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's where I feel science can let people down, is it's not quick enough to get there for some people. Like, it's helped one person, it's medicinal, it's got something, explore it. Yeah. Like, let's put it into class B.5 or BC, where we don't know, but we think we're going to get to class C, where it does have medicinal impact on people's lives.
And a lot of it is who is paying the scientists to come up with the work, you see. That's the problem, is that there isn't enough independent science anymore. It's all science driven by an agenda by whichever corporation company wants to push whatever they want to push. And so finding, you know, so many people say, why isn't there enough research into it? And it's like, well, there's thousands of research papers on cannabis. It's one of the most, if not the most researched drug, medicine, whatever you want to call it, out there. And yet none of us seem to be able to just get on this same page and go, let everyone have it. Yeah. For goodness sake, just let everyone have it, because this is ridiculous.
Have you heard of Ben Goldacre? He wrote a book called Bad Pharma.
Yeah, I have heard of that. Yeah,
really good book. And it helps people understand why certain things don't make it, and why something like cannabis, he does talk about cannabis and why that doesn't make it. And because even though scientists truly want to do good science, they're still backed. Big science takes a lot of money.
It does.
A good microscope, like one of the microscopes we've got access to in one of the unis, costs £1 million. Yeah. And like that's funded by that university, but for big science, it's funded by pharmaceutical companies.
They want their money back.
Yeah, they'll say, listen, we're going to give you 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, do this. And it just, even though it might not even be one of those things where they say, make this look good for us, the psychological stuff going on play with the scientists will go, oh, that's going to make them look bad. I'm going to lose my funding. And I know I can do some more good if I just do that with that statistic. Yeah. It goes on. So if you're interested on how the pharmaceutical industry works and why this is happening, Bad Pharma is a great book.
Yeah, let's pick it up.
One of the things that I wanted to ask about was, you said you came from not hating cannabis, but you were just anti-drugs. You were the same as a lot of people. Mm-hmm. What was it that made you choose cannabis? Why did you give it to Darren? Like, what was it that made you think, I'm going to try this?
Yeah, I guess... So going back a little bit, Darren had his second transplant, which had failed because the drugs they were giving him and such. And he had an adenovirus, and it takes about 20 days for a transplant to take hold. So they said, look, we're going to give you another transplant of your own cells, but we're not going to treat the adenovirus anymore. So if the adenovirus gets him within the next 22 days, you know, but hopefully his bone marrow will kick in before the adenovirus gets him. But, you know, one of them is going to get there first. I suggest you pray. And I went, no. That. I'm like, no, I'm a bit more...
Are you really that blunt?
Oh, yeah, they are really that blunt. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, okay. So straight away I went on the internet, and because this had really been one of the first times I'd actually then turned to the internet about things, because you're told very early on, don't go on the internet. We will tell you everything you need to know, because it will just scare you if you go on there looking at statistics and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay. But, you know, if I hadn't gone on the internet. So
there is good, isn't it? A bit like if you've got a headache and you think, oh, it's a bit of a headache on my temple.
Oh, you'll have a brain
Google
tumour, yeah.
Yeah, so like it is sometimes, don't always Google, but...
And don't look at statistics either, because they're not you.
And they're manipulated.
Oh, they are. Yeah. And statistics mean nothing unless you take exactly the same person with exactly the same DNA, with exactly the same everything as that person will then know. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But I'd started to look at alternatives for adenovirus, natural alternatives to adenovirus. I was like, it's just a cold, for God's sake, how hard can this be? Found lemon balm, echinacea, all these other things. And I went out and spent about 200 quid on Manuka honey and loads of stuff. And I just started whacking it into him. And within a week, I got rid of the adenovirus within a week. The doctors were just, you know, dumbfounded and kind of shaking their head at me, and they couldn't understand. I was like, it's just all this stuff here, you know.
Just to confirm, just because he was on antibiotics, but antibiotics is fight bacteria. They have no impact on virus. So there was nothing that he was on that should have got rid of the virus. They just had to get...
Oh, they couldn't. At that point, all of the drugs that they were given for the virus had already failed his first 2 transplants, because the drug... had a dramatic effect on the immune system, but also for the adenovirus, and then some other drugs. It was just a balancing act. They couldn't get it right. And so I just started looking into natural alternatives, and then I started looking even further into, you know, other things, and cannabis was just kept being there, you know. And I kept kind of looking at it and going, again, like I said, but he didn't have cancer anymore, so what's the point? This was a complete different thing. But then people, I don't even know who they were. Just the odd person would be like, you know, you need to look at this, because I was on social media and stuff, and people. So I started looking, but really did just dismiss it. Until it got to the point where he was going to lose his hand, And this is obviously after his 4th and final transplant. He trapped his fingers down the side of the bed because his 3rd one failed as well. So his 4th one, trapped his fingers, got these 2 massive infections in his hand. He had 2 in his mouth. And it was just, the pain that he was experiencing from, he was necrotic from the knuckles down. So it was like frostbite. And he could feel his hand dying at the end, And he was on fentanyl by this point and nothing was touching it. No, gabapentin, nothing was touching the neuropathic pain he was experiencing. So I started looking, natural alternative pain. Bedrocan came up. Bedrocan. Okay. So I said to the doctor, look, found this guy here. He got a prescription. He just drove over to Amsterdam. He was able to pick it up, bring it back into the country because he had a prescription. Just write him a prescription. I'll drive over there. Can't. It's not licensed for children. Neither's half the chemotherapy drugs that you pump into him. But hey, it's not that stop you. So I felt so that I'd found something and then felt absolutely disheartened that, another thing that we're not allowed to try. So I just thought, well, what's the main ingredient of Bedrocan? It's cannabis. So I was like,
alarm bells start ringing.
Yeah, all right, look, maybe I'll just make him something. Because they wanted to chop his hand off, they would. And I was like, we've got to find a way to stop that kind of happening. So eventually they went into with a neurectomy. They took out all the nerves here, the nerve bundles, and they just severed them. They cauterized them actually, so he'd never feel his hand again and he'd never move his hand again, which was fine because he was dying. We didn't care. We just wanted him to be pain-free, And so I made this, got some cannabis from a guy that I'd met in the gym because I was still going to the gym. I was a bodybuilder back then, and that was my that was my therapy. I'd go to the gym every day for a couple of hours in the early morning, then go and sit with Darren, and that was it. So I met a guy there, and he was like, look, I've got a house full of the stuff. Why don't you do that? I can get you some. I was like, all right then. So got some of him in a car park in the middle of Bristol somewhere, and just made this tincture and vegetable glycerin tincture. So it wasn't oil, it was just a hot extraction, and put it in a vape pen, normal e-liquid with the little cotton thing in there, and he kind of, there was loads of smoke everywhere and it all smelled really lovely, but he was like, it's not doing anything for my pain. It's doing absolutely nothing. Doing nothing, Mum. I was like, again, disheartened. Yeah. Tried. So then he had the neurectomy and that was all, that was all good. He was pain-free now. But then when by the time we got to the hospice and, I still had this jar of tincture and everything was, the morphine, the painkillers, all of this. And it'd been going on so long that I just whack it in his mouth. Like if it didn't work with the pen, just eat a load of it. And I tasted it. I was like, it tastes nice. It tastes really sweet, and I thought, and he had it. And within half an hour, the change in him was visible within half an hour. I mean, I literally watched in waves as he kind of, relaxed. His shoulders went down. He was like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I don't need anything else. And then the nurse turned up with the cyclozine that he'd become incredibly addicted to. And so addicted to. He talks about it now like heroin. He says, Mum, I think that's probably the nearest to injecting heroin that I'll ever get. More so than morphine because of the feeling that it gave him. And he was so addicted to it for about 9 months. And when she came to the door with it, I did immediately think, oh, shit, what have I done? Like, what if now she gives him that on top and I've done something and it kills him? I mean, I know he's dying, but I don't want to, And so I didn't have to worry because he turned around and he was like, no, take it away. I don't want it. I looked at her and she looked at me and I was like, take it before he changes his mind, please. And she's okay. So off she went. He never had it again. No more morphine, no more sleeping tablet, nothing. Yeah. Took him all off it. It's an exit drug. It took him off all of those things. He didn't need any. He went, I don't want it. I'm good. Yeah. And the nurse, just like that, 1 dose, just like that. And the nurses obviously started to become a bit suspicious. It's like, well, why, And so I told a couple of them, so I've given him this. Giving him cannabis, and they were like, they started calling it the magic under the bed because they were seeing what it was. Even that, and in that respect, to get a child off those incredibly harmful, toxic drugs, which all they are doing is sedating you until you die, to get him off those, which they'd never really seen before, with just this stuff that I'd made from a plant, they were absolutely blown away by it, and then to see what happened with his blood count, obviously they were just.
So the nurses are like,
oh,
they've got one on the doctors here. The doctors are like scratching their heads thinking, we don't know. And the nurse is like, oh, we do. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It was crazy, really crazy times. And, I'll never forget it. Them running around like shredding the do not resuscitate forms because he's not dying anymore. And he was like, what do you mean I'm not dying anymore? Yeah. And, but.
When he took that tincture and then half an hour after and you seen him just relax, what was that feeling like for you?
it was already a miracle because already, okay, this is how he wants to die. This is how we all want him to die. And that sounds horrible saying that, but he's dying, right? Yeah, in peace, painless, no anxiety, not fighting it. You know, he just, okay. And he says that for those 5 days, he says there's a period of 3 days that he doesn't really remember much, but he knows that he came back a very different person, that he wasn't the same person in those 5 days. Something happened to him. And we know now, looking back, that cannabis is actually a bit of a psychedelic, and actually it's very good at helping us deal with deeper issues, and, you know, can be very much a gateway drug into an open mind, and actually it does change us as a person. I think I'm very much a different person than I was before I was smoking cannabis or consuming it in any way, you know. So, and he says that there was this period where he really had this, he doesn't remember much, but he knows he just felt in a really good place. And when he came out of it, he felt like a very different person. And yeah, so for us already, it was like, God, yeah, if he can die like this,
you've done a
then
good
I'm
job.
happy. And he's happy because it's his last dying wish was to not die on morphine and to die. You know, he said, Mum, they took everything else from me. They're not taking my death. I want to experience it. And so to know that he was going to be awake and experience everything, brilliant already. You know?
And if that had been the only thing that it had done,
I'd
it would have still
happy.
been a miracle, wouldn't it?
I would have still been very happy, and I'd have still been singing cannabis's praises, and I'd have still been pushing it for palliative care, and I'd have still been as vehemently, you know, positive as I am about it, because, yeah, immediately seeing that was just like, wow, I never thought cannabis could do that. And so, yeah, it really made me look at my whole stance on cannabis as well. And so I was like, I'm going to start having some of this stuff too. You know? Yeah.
When did it click? Like, that's what it does for Darren. Hang on, let's have a little, see what it does for me.
Yeah. So I was taking a little bit of it. You know, I was taking a little bit, and I started to smoke a bit of it, but not really that much. I was more still focused on Darren. Everything was still focused on him, and it was only really in the October that year when, you know, we'd obviously been to Spain and we'd got oil for him, and he's starting on a proper oil regimen where he's on 150 milligrams every single day and has been for the last 6 years. When he started that, and he really started to recover, and his hand started to come back, and you know, he really started to get stronger, I was then able to sit back and go, oh, you know, he's recovering. And of course, that's when everything hits you all at once. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, all that shit you've been suppressing for the last 4 years, have some right now. And you're like, so I had a nervous breakdown. It absolutely floored me. I had a really hard time. Ended up in the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack on ECG machines, and the doctors were like, you're having a nervous breakdown, you know, and you have got serious PTSD. You are, you know, you're in a really bad way. This is what we want to do. Started writing prescriptions, and I was like, no, forget it. Pharmaceutical industry, no, do one. I'm not going down that road. I don't need to. Saw what it did for his mental health, so I kind of came back and really started to then push myself on a proper regimen. Isn't
it mad what the brain does though? Because never on that level I've experienced it, but everyone will have experienced this, is where you work hard, work, you seem to crack on and you don't get ill. But those, you know, when you take like a couple of weeks off, you just seem to get ill. The body must just go, he knows he's not working for a few weeks now. Let's just make, like, he needs to be ill. And like, you just get a bit of a cold or a cough or whatever. Just hits you. Yeah. And it's the same with I go back to my mum as well. My mum has dealt with things with a sister. She passed away, and my nan, and she deals with it amazingly. You think, how are you dealing with this? Like, this is a lot of heavy stuff. And like, you're looking and you're thinking, wow, you're a strong woman. And then 2 years, I think it was 4 years later with my mum and my auntie, and it hit my mum. And I think it was 2 years later with my nan and her mum. And it's like the brain must be like, you can't deal with this right now. We're going to truck through. We're going to get you through it. But then when there's a bit of a calm in the storm, it might just go, right, we need time to heal now. Yeah. And I think it's an amazing thing, the brain. Yeah. Oh yeah. It makes you keep going. You know, it realises, it prioritises. I couldn't break down when Darren was going through all that. I couldn't have done. I had to hold everything together and like keep it all going and you know, do what needed to be done. But mum strength. Yeah. The strongest superpower. Yeah, I think so sometimes. You know, this is Luke's been with me for when we've been doing podcasts for a long time as well. I'm like super professional when we're doing podcasts, and in my head I can keep things flowing, and a couple of times there I've just been like, oh shit, I need to say something in a minute, right? Where's the next thing? And I'm looking down at my sheet going, But I half knew that I'd happened a little bit. I like sucked into the story a little bit. You know what I mean?
I can talk forever as well, so just be careful. Cause
Yeah. Now, if it was, I don't know. I like doing long content. We have started doing some short content, 45-minute things. But when we do the short content, when we do the long content, people go, you can make it like a bit short, and like, because we love your podcast, but we just never get to the end of it.
Yeah.
And we start doing short content, and then other people firing and going, like, I literally spend my whole Sunday or 3 till 6 listening to the podcast. So you can't please everyone.
No,
can you?
that's it. You got to do.
Yeah,
do what's good for
so
you.
just try and mix it up on
that's
that.
it. And yeah, people can take it or leave it, can't they?
Yeah.
Is that in the right place now? Is that okay?
Yeah. So just if you can drag it any closer to you,
There
that'd be
we go.
great. Do you remember when Luke actually filmed when we were in Birmingham with Colin, who Mammoth Microbes,
Mammoth, yeah.
and Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Luke and the team
Ah,
who did all the
that's
filming.
right. I
over there.
remember you being at the back.
Yeah,
and that, yeah.
That's on our YouTube channel as well.
That was a long time ago. Yeah. A couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Don't talk to Jeff anymore.
Don't you? Oh yeah, you filmed you at the CBD Expo, and we're going to talk about that actually, because I don't know what your feelings are, but I've got the Hemp and CBD Expo there. Talk about your key speaker. How do you feel it went? Do you think we need more of the same to help with the movement, or do something different? What's your thoughts on the suits coming into the industry? Because as I walked around it, I won't do any work for Hemp and CBD Expo again, because just out of principle, I went there. We are all that either do smoke, have smoked, or whatever, and we're all sort of hoodies and just casually dressed. And when we did the filming there, I'm filming my industry. Like, I am very protective.
Yeah.
I feel like it's my
Yeah.
industry. I'm very protective over it. One of the edits that we got back, I had to tell Luke, and he said, can you make it look less hoodie and try and get some more of the more professional people in? Yeah, try and get more of the suits in. And these
Yeah,
people,
the
one
suits
of
that are
them,
making money while the hoodies are still in prison for it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess stuff.
and I said to them, I said, we did okay off it, but I said, I'm not doing work for Hemp and
No.
CBD Expo again.
No, I don't blame you. I don't, yeah. We can, I'll be, yeah.
Yeah. They're just the small one who gave the presentations out, just arrogant, not in our industry. No, don't know him.
Oh, no, they all come from the vape industry.
Yeah.
They all just come from the vape industry, made a shit ton of money from the vape industry and went, CBD is the next big thing, you know? Yeah.
So when I've got like a guest on, I don't really like to go against opinions and have like a slang and match. So I just wanted to sort of feel out, because if you're going to do a talk next year, obviously I've got to be careful about what I say.
Well, I might do, but the thing is with them is I use them as much as they think they're using me. They're not using me at all, because I will be very open and blatant. And I've say every single time I go there, I go, I'm going to talk about THC, right? And they go, oh, and I go, well, then don't invite me, because I'm not talking about THC because it's like, nah, you want to talk about cannabis, and let's talk about cannabis. Stop taking out little bits just so you can make money from that little bit, because you're not going to get in any trouble because you don't actually, nah, it's all or nothing. Right?
Because I've got like a very one-sided opinion of that expo now. I wouldn't go to another one. They said, Luke was there, the whole team was there Friday. Was it a Friday, Saturday, or was it a Saturday, Sunday thing?
Saturday, Sunday, I think.
Yeah,
So
we were there on the Saturday. We went what should have been the busiest day.
yeah.
Filmed midday.
Oh, the last one was
Dead.
dire.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, he said to us, "Can you make it look more busy?"
Yeah, not
like,
really.
yeah,
It
the
was to
camera's
Photoshop
like-
some people in.
I know.
It's like,
We was there the whole day as well, so it's a lot with
Yeah,
Wow.
pick-
done stuff too early. Do you know what I mean?
I think you could have like bunched up literally a quarter of them, tried to ferry them to one side of the expo,
Yeah.
and gone, right, we're gonna have to film it now. Fake.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
They had the one with Ignite. That when Ignite were there, they had a lot of football there. And of course, this is Ignite in Dan Bill's area, and came walking through with all his women, didn't he? And then
There
it
was
was
Dan Bilzerian there.
he came,
Did
yeah,
he?
yeah. He's very small.
Is he?
He's tiny. Yeah.
Wow.
He went walking past me with his tighty orange shorts on and his little white t-shirt that he wears.
Yeah.
With all these girls who all just look miserable as sin. They had lovely bodies. I'd kill for
Yeah.
a body like it, but yeah, didn't look happy.
Just-
And and he come walking past, and I just looked, and he was like there at me, and I went, oh.
Wow.
Like, oh, it's a lot smaller than I expected. So that was a big one, but after that, it nosedived. After that, I think it was almost like that was their
Peak.
peak,
Yeah.
And since then, it's just gone. Another expo. Oh, same
They
as all
were
the other
trying to have
expos.
2 a year, weren't they?
Yeah. You can't do it. It's just not enough there.
No.
You know, and they're all the same.
And
Everybody
they're trying to attract the wrong people.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely think Product Earth and Hydro Expo and this Feed Yourself, he's part industry. He's been in it for a long time. He's got the right people. And I think he will make a success of it. I hope he does anyway. But
I like Product Earth. I really enjoyed Product Earth. I think that was more
the people.
For the people, more of a
suit would stick out.
Oh, yeah.
Like me and my hoodie walking around, I felt like I was out of place at the hemp and CBD
It's like
Expo.
SANabyss, the same as SANabyss, isn't it? You walk around there and it's like, we're all just a bunch of stoners and we're all there for the same thing because we love the plant and different ways of getting it into us.
Yeah.
That's it. We love all the really pretty ways that we can get this shit into us like quick.
So one of the other things that I wanted to get into is it's been, 4 years now since the miracle happened. How many years has it been since?
Well, it was January 2014.
So 6 years.
6.5 years. It was 6 years, 6 and a bit years.
Yeah. So what now is available? If there's a young child in Den's position today, is there any new medicine available that wasn't available then?
No.
So nothing's changed.
No. We've got, obviously, Epidiolex has come out. So, November 2018, the government, or GW Pharmaceuticals, should I say, launched their new product. And then it became legal for doctors to prescribe it, although it's been legal for doctors to prescribe cannabis for, 15 years now? Sativex, you know? So this caused a massive amount of confusion. I had an influx of people, last November 2018. Oh, well, it's legal now. So Darren can just go to the doctors now. I'm like, no, don't work like that. You know, in order to be prescribed Epidiolex, which is just CBD really, and that's mainly for epileptic people, is that you have to literally exhaust every single avenue, and that includes brain surgery. So they will cut your child's brain apart before they'll give them cannabis, and or for the associated symptoms of chemotherapy. So we know that it helps with nausea and things like that. So on a low scale, they'll give a low dose, so it'll help with the side effects of chemotherapy. Not enough to actually help with the cancer, because obviously they don't want to actually do that. They just, they want to be able to poison you whilst making money from cannabis at the same time. So, yeah, there's nothing new. If Darren was in the same position now, he would face the same troubles. He would have the same treatment. In fact, he tells his doctors, it's all over his medical notes now that he consumes cannabis. And he had it. He stood above his doctor about a year and a half ago, and said, I want you to change my notes, put cannabis on here. That in January 2014, my mum gave me cannabis, and that's what did this and ever. And he's like, standing under duress, and he went, Darren believes. And he goes, no, take out the believes thing. Like, my mum gave me cannabis. I didn't die. There's nothing you guys did. So put it on my notes. And it's like, clack it on his notes. And he said, and I take it every single day. And I have done for, however many years. And he said, he's literally slapped his hand on the desk, because he now has full range of movement in his hands. It's only really the fingertips he can't feel. And he slapped that hand on the desk and started explain that to me. And the doctor's like, we can't. And he goes, I can. It's called neurogenesis, specifically THC regrows neural pathways. This is what's happened around the damaged area that you've cut. And it's given me, virtually full range of movement again, full recovery. And his doctor, his adult oncologist, actually, the first time that we spoke about cannabis, I put the book on the desk, and the doctor looked and he said, I guess you're going to want to talk about this. And I was like, yeah, I do. And he literally put his fingers in his ears. Not just figuratively, he literally put his fingers in his ears and he went, I don't want to know about this. I toe the party line. I went, so what are you doing? Here I'm looking at a doctor who's really well qualified, and I'm looking at him, la, 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 la. And I was like, what are you doing? And he said, I don't want to know. I toe the party line. And I went, do you know what? I said, you've got 60 odd people out there. If it's helped him, it could help maybe even one or two of those.
Yeah.
But you're not a doctor, you're a butcher. If you are refusing to even look at new information that's been put in front of you with living proof of it, how can you call yourself a doctor? You toe the party line.
Well, what's the saying? What's the doctors have to take the doctoral oath?
They don't even sign that anymore.
What?
They don't sign the
Hippocratic oath.
So they don't sign that, and they haven't done for a few years now. So when I was in hospital, this was even before Darren had his transplant. He was going through another 6 months of intensive chemotherapy because, this is what he had to have pre-transplant. And they almost killed him with that. And I said to them then, I almost pulled the plug on it, even though I didn't really have a choice. But I said to the doctors, I was like, right, I've had enough now. He had this temperature that was raging like 42 degrees. They couldn't get his temperature down. They really thought that he was going to die. And I said to them, I was like, look, you are poisoning him with such a huge amount of chemotherapy. The cancer was cut out of his throat. He hasn't had leukemia for years now. You know, why are you giving such high amounts of chemotherapy to someone that doesn't even have cancer? You're killing him. And she said to me, well, you know, we're not worried about what we can see, we're worried about what we can't see. And I was like, and I said, look, don't you sign some kind of oath, don't you? And she said, we don't sign that anymore. I was like, oh my God, like,
I know.
you don't even, that's not even a thing that you have to promise now, that you will do no harm.
Yeah.
You don't even say that anymore. So what is our healthcare system? You know,
It's so scary.
It is terrifying. And when you find out, you know, that if I'd have said no to chemotherapy right at the very beginning, Darren would have made a ward of the court. They would have done it anyway, because it would have been seen as in the child's best interest, and the parents are just being difficult. So actually the parents are now guilty of child negligence. So take the parents away, put the child into care, do the chemo anyway. And that's what we do in this country when we know there's other ways.
So that's what my point was going to be, is I didn't know that they didn't have to sign that anymore. What my point was going to be is they signed the Hippocratic Oath to say, at first, we will do no harm.
Yeah.
And the given chemotherapy absolutely does cause harm. It in some people it helps, and probably a lot of people it helps, and it'll cure cancers maybe in some cases. But hair loss, anything, any fast grown cells, it obliterates, so it does harm. And in kids, it's going to do a lot of harm.
Yeah.
So it's I know it's going to be a fine line, especially like that it does help some people, but I can't believe that that's just that they don't sign that Hippocratic Oath. That's so scary.
It is scary, because it leaves it open to kind of all sorts. It's unending then. But I mean, chemotherapy, I never, you know, I obviously I help a lot of people now, and I get a lot of people say to me, should I have chemo? You know, and I go, that's not my choice to make. That's your choice to make. Because chemotherapy was what saved Darren's life in the first place when he walked in there with leukemia. He had chemotherapy and it got rid of his cancer within 3 months. He did really well. You know, he obviously lost all his hair. He had huge amounts of side effects. And the chemo ongoing did almost kill him at times. And you think, but they're not looking at long term, you see. I remember even when they said to me, they said, right, these are the side effects of the chemotherapy. Hair loss, weight loss, you know, mucositis, all these other things, death, secondary cancers, you know. And I went, well, hang on a second. I said, why on earth are you treating cancer with something that causes cancer? I don't understand. That makes no sense to me. And she said, well, because we're not looking long term, we're looking at 5 years. Anything over 5 years is a bonus. So we're short term. So yes, it might give him cancer again, but at least he'll still be alive. And you're like, what? This is so backwards, you know, in the death thing. And that's when I said, well, what if I say no? And she said, that's when he'll be made a ward of the court and it will go ahead without you. So it's better that you're next to his hospital bed than a foster carer. Sign here. Yeah. And you're like, this feels like blackmail, you know, and it is, because it is blackmail. And it's very scary that, you know, so chemotherapy has its place and stuff. But with chemotherapy, what we have to look at now, I think, is not whether it works or not, but whether actually it's worth it in the way that it works, when we know that cannabis works with against cancers and things like that, because I've seen it in many other people since Darren. You know, obviously I didn't see it with Darren because he didn't have cancer, but I do firmly believe that that's what's keeping his cancers at bay, because the bone marrow he has going throughout his body now is his own bone marrow. It's the bone marrow that harboured the 2 cancers in the first place. They had to give that back to him because they had no other option from any other donors. So it is the cancers, the bone marrow that harboured the cancer. So I do firmly believe that the amount of cannabis he's having every day is also going to prevent either one of those coming back. And I'm not stopping him to make, you know, just to try that. Yeah. Oh, look, his cancer has come back. Oh, the cannabis was working then, you know. Oh, well, now we're down a completely different path. So, you know, as a preventative, chemotherapy, as much as it does do people a lot of good, it's very short-term good. So is it really worth the payoff when you know that 5 years down the line, you're going to get cancer again? If you haven't sorted out your diet and you haven't got rid of the toxicity that's built up from the chemotherapy that they've given you, you are going to get cancer again. And the second time, it probably will kill you. But they get to make double money out of you. Yeah. So it's all good.
What I don't understand is what would happen is, you know, if they did this in stages, cannabis has minute side effects compared to chemotherapy. So what is the harm in administering it under medical supervision? Let's try this first. Let's see what it does. No, it hasn't had the impact on this individual. Okay, so let's move to the next stage. Then I think that there's a lot of chemotherapy hate. And I think that comes from, it's because it's like the first thing that they're going to do to you. What, are you going to subject me to chemo? And this is the first thing. What about all this other pleasant stuff? Diet change, lifestyle change, holistically, everything at once at the beginning. Do that anyway, because it's going to make you, I don't want to say a better human, but it definitely improves your health. Yeah. And then if cannabis is a preventative, some people will do that. But then before chemo, let's do cannabis first. Does it work? It worked fantastic. It didn't work. Okay, that hasn't worked for you. Let's move on. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will be like, at least have tried. Yeah. Let's move on to the chemotherapy.
And that's how they do it. That's how they do it in America. I don't know if you've seen Weed the People, but over in California, there's a documentary. Ricky Lake did it, and one of my friends is in it actually, Chico's mum. And Chico, she was in California, so when he got a really rare, quite aggressive cancer, he was offered cannabis oil alongside his chemotherapy, and he was one of the only people to survive because he was one of the only ones that took it, because the others like, oh no, we don't want to, because it's whatever. But he's done really well on it. And so yeah, it goes back to the whole Epidiolex thing as well. Is why are we cutting children's brains open before we're trying a plant that has, when people say to me, cannabis cures anything, I don't use the word cure. I don't like it. That's another bone of contention I have, but I don't like to use that word because I feel it brings too much false hope sometimes and is a bit misleading. But, I say that cannabis isn't a cure, but it is a highly effective treatment with minimal detrimental side effects, which the same cannot be said for the alternatives that the conventional treatment will offer you. When you see the list of side effects of chemotherapy, or even Darren was on something like 5 different antiemetics, anti-sickness drugs, because the first anti-sickness drug, one of the side effects was sickness. And I was even looking at it, I was like, why are you giving him this on top of dexamethasone? And they're like, well, because dexamethasone, it causes sickness. I went, but it's an anti-sickness. I went, yeah, but it's a different kind of sickness. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Like, there's a misprint on this label here. It says the anti-sickness causes sickness. Yeah. Someone's mistyped here.
Yeah. Well, someone's making a pretty penny out of something that's causing an issue. It's like, it just makes no sense. And of course, a lot of the chemotherapy, a lot of the drugs that come from chemotherapy aren't even chemotherapy. They are the anti-sickness, the ones on Dantatron to line the stomach so that you don't, ruin your stomach, all of these other things. Then there's the painkillers, then there's this to counteract that, and then that to counteract that and that and that. And you're like, oh my God, you're rattling all of a sudden. So when people say, I don't understand why they don't just allow us to have cannabis because they could make money from it, when you actually go, no, they couldn't, not as much as they make, because we're talking even the things to put the bags on, and the saline, and the Hickman lines, and the drips, and the cannulas, all of this all adds up as part of cancer treatment. And I think it's worth something like 180 billion quid a year in this country. And so you cannot make enough money out of cannabis to replace the long-term money-making abilities of chemotherapy and normal conventional treatment. Especially when it's something we can grow ourselves.
I know. And they're trying to isolate, aren't they? They're trying to isolate. The last time I checked, 118 active compounds. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's just when I last checked. That's when I say compounds, I'm talking about CBG, CBD, THC, all of them. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to isolate 1 or 2 and give them. But from the research that I've done, you'll have heard me talk about it before, the synergism. It's the entourage effect. The entourage effect, and how they work together. So CBG may massively increase the effect of CBD. CBD by itself might have a 20% effect. Give it with CBG, it goes to 40%. All this going on with 118 different compounds, you can have 118 different variations. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make money by isolating, doing the research and saying, right, we own
we this. Can paint it there.
Yeah. So that's what they're trying to do. And because it is so simple, and to grow a plant and to consume a plant, it's been going on we did the history of cannabis about 2 years ago. Started out in China, the Russian borders, Serbia, what's the cold part of Russia called?
It's
what's it called? Someone help us out here.
It's Serbia, isn't it?
Is it?
The cold parts.
Luke's going to Google it because I say this all the time. On podcast, the brain just goes pop sometimes.
Thank God this is not like a game show. It's like,
I know. That you can understand the pressure people get under in game shows. It's like the cold part of Russia. It's not I can't read that. Shout it out. Siberia.
See, it was close.
Yeah.
It was close.
Get
away with it.
That feels so good, though, you know, when you get that answer. Oh, yeah,
At
Siberia.
least it wasn't 3 hours down the road driving your car and you just shout, Siberia!
You did a Scouse accent then as well.
I could do it every now and again. Not very often, but yeah.
But yeah, it started out in Siberia, China. It's a million years old. So, the consumption of it's been going on for millennia as well.
And no one's died yet.
No, that's the funny fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's ever died directly from cannabis consumption. But there's we can go on forever talking about the fact that hit and run incidents actually decreasing in places where there's legal, medicinal and recreational cannabis. It actually goes down, which people are like, no, I can't do. Go and check the science. It actually goes down. Yeah. It's mad, but we can do that on another podcast.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted to talk about a little bit different from maybe what you normally talk about is how the impact of looking after Darren, and you've got your other son Dylan, like the impact that had and how tough it was for you. I've got Isaac, my little lad, and it's really nice talking to you now rather than 2 years ago. He just turned 4, and as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking to myself, don't think too much about Isaac because you're going to get upset about if I had to go through what you went through. Yeah. And I can try and put myself in your shoes, a horrible position, but you had Dylan as well. You had two sons to look after.
That was, that was a difficult one because he was only 5 when Darren was first diagnosed. He'd literally just started school. In fact, it was 4 days into the summer holidays and Dylan was due to start school in September. Darren had just finished junior school, so he was going to move up to high school. And it was difficult, mainly logistically to start with. Because having 2 children in kind of one in a hospital and then one at school. And so I had to rely very heavily on my mum to go and pick him up. And I had other people who would pick him up from school and stuff. But then it became, when Darren was neutropenic, which basically means that the white count is below 1. So he's very susceptible to picking up anything. I then took the decision to take Dylan straight out of school because little kids like that, as you know, they're dirty little buggers. Yeah. And that's great because that's the way they build your immune system. And please make your children keep them dirty. Please let them play in the dirt. Stop spraying them with Dettol. And but him coming home, I then had to try and almost quarantine the house in a way. And the kids just weren't allowed to interact. And I was like, nah, I'm not, this is for socially, this is no. So I just took Dylan out of school and he kind of, rightly or wrongly, he saw an awful lot of what was going on, but we managed to keep the family unit together. And then Dylan was kind of in and out of school. When Darren wasn't neutropenic, I put him straight back into school. So it was periods of in and out of school. But being 5 years old, they're not doing the GCSEs, are they? You know, it's all a bit of, what'd you do at school today? Played and learned.
Yeah.
That's it, is it? Yeah.
Sand.
Yeah. It's like, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So, him kind of dipping in and out wasn't so much of an impact on him. And then when Darren went to Bristol, when he had to go to have the bone marrow transplants, and it was a case of, right, well, you come from Norfolk, we go into Bristol and like 5 hours apart. And me and my ex-husband were taking in turns to kind of go and stay with Darren and stay with Dylan. And it got to the point, it was like, I wasn't seeing Dylan for like 2-3 weeks at a time. I was like, I can't cope with this. So I said, right, at the end of this school year, because they said to us, you'll only be in Bristol for maybe 7 weeks. Worst case scenario, 10 weeks. This is like 6 months later. We're like, we're still here and it doesn't look like we're going anywhere anytime soon. So I said, look, take Dylan out of school and bring him here. So we all moved to Bristol and he used to go to the hospital school in the morning for a couple of hours. And he really enjoyed that. And he's a very, I don't know whether this has molded him into this kind of person or whether this is how he always was, but he's a very quiet person and quite happy in his own company and doesn't need really anybody to kind of interact with him. He's very happy on his own and he can occupy himself very easily. And so, again, rightly or wrongly, he had an iPad and he would sit on his iPad under the desk at the end of Darren's bed, the little hospital tables, under the hospital table at the end of Darren's bed. And he would sit there with his iPad and he would make stop motion movies with his Lego figures at like 5, 6, 7, and he was just kind of doing that. And he just loved doing that. And he was more than happy doing that. But now he's nearly 16. He's still not really gone back to school. He put himself back in school last December because he wants to be a goalkeeper and he's absolutely adamant that he wants to be a goalkeeper. Again, I'm on my own.
Yeah.
I'm on my own and it's all me. And I'm like, it kind of suits you, you know.
Yeah.
He's very happy there on his own. And so he wants to join an academy for football, and so he needs his GCSEs. And he's like, look, I'm just going to go back and do my GCSEs, get what I can, and see where it gets me. But as he started school in the December, and then lockdown happens, and he was like straight out of school. And I said to him the other day, I was like, "You're going to go back to school?" He went, "No, I can't do it, Mum." He finds it very difficult to. This is one thing that kind of saddens me, and I've had the conversation with him. Is it saddens me that even as a very young person, he is very old. You know, he's very old. He's had no childhood as such. He hasn't had the bike rides out with his mates. He hasn't fallen out of trees. He's never done any of that. Darren did a lot of that because we grew up in the countryside. So Darren was always out on his bike and playing in the fields and, you know, climbing trees and coming back with sticks stuck in his leg, you know, all of that. But Dylan never had any of that because from the age of 5, it's all about his brother. And as much as all the nice things that Darren did get to have, because, you know, these kids do get to have a lot of treats if they're well enough to have the treat in the first place. And sometimes, you know, I'd rather not have the treats than have the payoff of having cancer and nearly dying. I don't think that's worth any treats. But it's nice that these children have their wishes granted and things like that. So whenever Darren got anything nice, we always made sure that Dylan also got that too, because seeing his brother get everything that he was asking for because he was, you know, locked in a hospital room, kind of made him a bit okay. But he never really grumbled. He never really said anything. He was Dylan. It was amazing. I'm so proud of him of how he dealt with everything. But I know that it's had an effect on him too. And I know that it's shaped him to kind of be the person that he is. And I do sometimes mourn the person that maybe he would have been had that not happened. But it has happened, and that's life. And there's nothing we can do. We can't go back. So
If I had to make a prediction, I'd say, though, that both of your sons will become superstars. And the reason I say that is because I'm a big book reader. Yeah. I love reading my books. And one of my favourite authors, Dan Ariely, he does behavioural psychology.
Okay.
And he does a lot of things with pain. So he had 3rd-degree burns over 90% of his body, really badly scarred, spent 10 years in hospitals, but used that time. And he is the person today because of what he went through. Yeah. And you don't, from just my experience and from what I've read, you don't tend to have the superstars, the real intellectuals, the people who have massive insights, like groundbreaking insights, unless you've experienced some shit. Yeah. Like, if you've had normal upbringing, normal childhood, you don't tend to see those people making groundbreaking insights. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for me personally, the people I've read, the things I've seen, they seem to have been through some bad shit and it's shaped them, and now they've given back to society in ways that would have never happened if they hadn't gone through what they've gone through. Yeah. So if you had to make a prediction, I'd say they're going to do some good shit in their adult lives. Yeah, I think they will.
I'd love to see the day that I can stand behind Dylan and watch him in goal, or you know, and it would be incredible. I really would. I would love for a football team out there to kind of spot him and just help him, because he really has just sat in the background and not really shook any. He's just sat in the background and watched and waited and just been very patient and placid. And Dylan is such I don't know how to explain him. There's something about him that's just, he's so kind and loving, but also his bants. He has the best. He's so witty and clever. And for a kid that hasn't been to school really since he was, 6 years old, he is the most intelligent person I know. Yeah. And when anything he discovers and it interests him, he looks at it at such an in-depth level that I used to come home from work and I'd be like, oh, so, what did you do today? And he's like, oh, Mum, so I learned about this. And I've been watching old football games from like 1960, so blah, blah, blah. And he'll tell me all about not just the football team, but who was the manager and where they'd come from and little backstories that, and he goes in so in depth. And boxing, he watched all the president, when Trump was going for president, he was watching all of the presidential kind of talks and the whatever they call them between him and Hillary. And he was going, yeah, Mum, this, and blah, 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 telling me. I'm like, how do you retain all this information? He did, Jesse will talk to him sometimes and go, where do you put all this? How do you, and he's like, I just read a lot, I would love for him to really kind of go far in what he wants, for him to finally get something that's just for him and that, gives him a reward in some way because he bloody deserves it, that lad. He really has taken a lot on the chin.
They're both superstars, one for coming through what he came through and one for just being who he is because of being there in the background and being the nice, kind person at the end of it all.
I'm very lucky. I've got very wonderful children. I do understand how lucky I am that, you know, that my children are the way that they are. They don't really, other than Darren, you know, this, but they don't really give me any trouble, you know. I don't have to worry about them. Yeah. And I'm very close to both of them. We have very open and, you know, honesty is such a huge thing. It's, too many parents lie to their children because I know they're trying to protect them. I get that. But children aren't stupid. And there's ways of telling children the truth. You don't have to be so, you know, tactless. There are ways. I think honesty with children is more important, and it gives them more permission for them to be brutally honest as well. And that's when you get to the bottom of things. You know, I've had some very hard conversations with my children about my parenting skills or lack of. You know, my children have been very, very blunt with me and been like, you know, I've had the conversation. I go, okay, so where am I going wrong as a parent? What can I do? What am I doing wrong? And they're like, well, actually, this. And you go, oh, that hurt a little bit. Yeah. Oh, okay, don't take it personally. All right, what can I do to make it better so that we can have a better relationship? And I think, you know, having that open dialogue, even going back to when Darren was first diagnosed, the doctors berated me and told me off because I was so open and honest with Darren. And when he said, what's leukemia, you know, and I went, the doctor just sat there not saying anything. I said, it's blood cancer, it's cancer of the blood. And the doctor, I don't think you should have told him that yet. I'm like, what did you want me to tell him? Nothing. Just lie to him and pretend that nothing's going on while everyone's running around trying to cannulate him and put him in an ambulance. And you want me to pretend that I'm not doing that, I'm not lying to him from the off, you know, from the outset. So, like you said at the beginning, the either knowing what was coming, or the dying, there's some peace, and when you get there, or knowing that there's a future ahead of you. Knowing is the most important thing. Like you said, when he wasn't sure, he said, right, so it's not going to happen soon, but it could happen in the next year. The not knowing is the biggest hard thing. The limbo. Yeah, so like not knowing when doctors are running around looking a little bit like something serious is happening and you not knowing, it puts you to the shits up. Yeah, so I personally think you did the right thing. Yeah, I do doctors. Too. Yeah, I do too. And even with simple things in everyday life, your kids aren't stupid. They know you're lying to them. They know you're hiding something, and so they may not be able to articulate and go, no, you're lying to me. I can see it. Can you stop lying? So they can't articulate that. So they sit with it and they're like, I know my parents are lying to me. It's more of a feeling. It's not even when they're very young, it's not even a words that they can really articulate to themselves, but they have this feeling. They know their parents are being disingenuous with them. And that creates, my parents are lying to me, you know, and that's not a relationship I wanted to have. So my mum's had a go at me over the years for being, you're far too open and honest with your children. You tell them far too much. I'm like, how can you tell them far too much? You know, as long as you keep it age appropriate, you know, there are certain things you don't tell 3-year-olds in certain ways, but you can tell them certain parts of even things like, you know, relationships, sex education, things like that. You don't need to be graphic, but you need to at least have this open dialogue and have a conversation with your children about everything, because then they will grow up to be people that won't hide things and they can have conversations. And I think that's what we're lacking a lot in the world is honest communication. But on the flip side, when you turn around and you've said, like, listen, this is not good and that's not the best thing that can happen. On the flip side, when you turn around and say, you know what, this is great, this is good news, they're going to genuinely think, my mum would tell me if it wasn't good. She's saying it is good. Now I can believe, because you've always been honest with them. There's no second guessing, no questioning, no like, you just... Because I tried it once, right? I tried it once with it. It was when they diagnosed him for the second cancer. I remember he was about to go into surgery anyway because he was having another lumbar puncture where they put chemotherapy into the spinal column and stuff, and so he was going to go in for a general anyway, and the doctors had literally just told me, because they asked Darren to leave the room, or straight away as soon as they asked Darren to leave the room, he's like, I know something's up. And I was like, and the doctor said to me, you know, it is cancer. And I just remember being like, why? Just leave him alone. Just why more? Jesus, really? And me and my ex-husband had the conversation like, we're not going to tell him. We're going to let him go into surgery. We're not going to tell him because, you know, he's got to go into theatre. Anyway, we come out of the room. All right, you ready to go to theatre? And he went, so what aren't you telling me then? And I just was like, I can't even hide it from you, can I? He went, no. So just tell me. You have got cancer again, mate. He went, yeah, I knew it. So am I going into surgery now then? I was like, yes, mate. Yes, you are. And, you know, and so even trying to hide it to try and protect him was actually an insult. because he already knew. And that's what I think we do a lot of the time, is we insult our children's intelligence, and we think that they can't deal with something, but actually they can, and they'll deal with it a lot better if you're honest. And and then they know you've got their back. It's
Darren and Dylan, I think, are living proof that they can deal with a lot of shit that gets thrown at them. Before we move on to other stuff, and Callie, how's Darren getting on with his? He was wanting to become a chef, wasn't he?
He was.
How's he doing?
He was until he went and had a little bit of work experience with Heston Blumenthal. And realised that chefing's really fucking hard work. And he was like, so yeah, that chefing thing, no, don't want to do that anymore. I love cooking, and I don't want that ruined by having to stand up for 12 hours a day, and it hurt him.
People shouting at me.
People shouting, because he thought that I can just walk in as head chef. It's like, no, you can't, Darren. It's not going to work like that. But I'm Darren Blackwell. Doesn't matter, mate. And he's like, oh. So yeah, he kind of realised he was going to have to work really hard, and that it's hard work, and really the disabilities that his conventional treatment has left him with, as far as his legs and his skeletal structure, really, he can't stand up for long hours like that. He just can't do it. So, he just wants to grow really good cannabis now. That's what he wants to do. And, I was really, because Darren's autistic and he also has Tourette's syndrome. And so part of that, as him growing up, was that he never had a fire in his belly for anything. Nothing got his attention. Nothing was exciting. He was always like, everything was just... Pff. And so I was really concerned that as becoming an adult, that he would never develop a passion for anything. And that's so important for us to have ambitions and to have something to drive for, because otherwise, why are we here? What are we doing, And so for him not to have anything, it really concerned me. So when he found cooking, I was like, yes. And then when he no, I was like, oh. So to see him being so just interactive with growing and learning, and the things that he's learning, and the amount of time and effort he's putting into this says to me that he's absolutely in love with it. And I guess because he has obviously a very close relationship with cannabis, it literally saved his life. He understands that, and he understands that this is the thing keeping him alive. And so to be able to grow his own medicine, turn it into oil, and continue to keep himself alive and well all by himself, I think that, and to do it to the best of the abilities as well, no nutrients, things like this, he's living soil, no till. He has just the in-depth knowledge he has. I stand listening to him, I don't know what he's talking about anymore, but he does. And to see this fire and passion in his belly for the one thing that I really hope that he would, because I worried that I could keep getting him oil, but then what if something happens to me? And something will happen to me eventually. I'm older than him. Hopefully I will die before he does, So then what happens? So I thought he has to become, and I didn't have to push him into it. He found it by himself. He found that his love of growing these plants has just blossomed, and the only thing that saddens him is that he can't spend all day with them. He's like, I don't have enough to spend all day with. I want to be growing thousands so that I can literally, be submersed all day, every day. Yeah. And
fingers crossed that'll come for the UK.
Or even I would love to be able to get him into America, just to give him some work experience with these people that have been growing for a very long time, because again, it may be the same thing with chefing, is that he goes, I love it, get it on a massive scale. It's like, I don't like it anymore. It may be, but I don't think so. I think him being surrounded by plants will just be his idea of heaven. Absolutely. And I think the way he talks, I think he may end up wanting to become a breeder and have his own seed bank, because he's a flavour chaser, absolutely a flavour chaser. And he loves all the genetics, and he's so, he knows what this was crossed with this, and this was this, and this, and this, and and if I do this, and and I'm like, I'm lost, man, I don't know what you're talking about. But so he's absolutely fallen in love with cannabis, and I'm very pleased, and I'm not going to deter him from that, Very happy.
Happy days.
Yeah.
So, talking a bit more about cannabis, I've got to say, we're going to throw some sound effects in here, so a little bit of a round of applause for Cannabis Activist of the Year. Woo! Where's your medal?
Oh, I didn't bring my medal with me. I should have brought my medal. I know. That was so exciting, I was... I'd seen, it was Mike Wise that had put up, and there's a lot of there's a lot of awards out there, isn't there? You know, we spoke earlier about some expos that give out awards and things like that. And I mean, they're great and everything. And I've been a judge on many awards. So, you know, I've been kind of responsible for these people picking up these awards, and it's lovely. But when it's something that's kind of voted by the people, I was really blown away by it, because it's lonely. It's really lonely being where I am sometimes, because I do feel very much a bit of a lone wolf in what I do, because I don't work with anybody really other than Jessie, you know.
Yeah.
And so all of the things that I put into place, all of my consultation packages, and it's not really a good word for it, but I've written everything all by myself, and I've taken the knowledge that I've gathered by myself for many years, and I've put it all together, and so I try and help people as best I can, and so to be recognised for something that I feel very lonely sometimes doing, and it's like, oh, I haven't forgotten me. You know, I'm not irrelevant. I'm not, and it's not because it's an ego thing, but for me, it's I do rely very much on social opinion of me, because I feel it's my protection. And, you know, before I even came out with the book, I remember looking at parents in America who were doing similar things with their children. Sierra Riddle, her little boy called Landon. I'm very good friends with her now. She was in America, and she was one of the first pioneering women to be giving cannabis to their child illegally. And the backlash that she had was horrendous. And I remember looking at that thinking, I can't say anything in this country, because if it's bad over in where she is, I haven't got a cat's hope in hell, you know, and society going to be against me because I gave my kid a drug. And so I watched social opinion. And so as cannabis started to become a bit more acceptable, and then obviously I went on TV, brought out the book, and then it became more and more acceptable. It was like, I felt that my backing of society was my protection, because God forbid if the police did want to come and arrest me, I'd like to hope that there'd be a lot of people, that they'd be outraged, and there'd be a lot of people going, you can't do that. And so I feel sometimes that, you know, I've come off Facebook because it's just toxic. It was no good for my mental health. And so I kind of feel like I'm out of the loop a little bit. And with that comes a little bit of fear of like, am I going to get arrested and no one's going to care all of a sudden, you know? And so when you're out of sight, out of mind, it feels, you know, it feels a little, and of course with COVID and everything like that, all our events haven't been able to go ahead. So we haven't been able to meet up as a big group like we always do. So that community support that we always have with each other has kind of dwindled this last 6 months. So I know a lot of people within the industry, their mental health has really kind of deteriorated, mine included, because of the lack of community that we've been able to have. And so to all of a sudden this little amazing award comes out of the woodwork, and it's like, oh, you've got this. I was like, what? This is amazing. It's like, oh my God, you know, people are still supporting me, and people are still behind me and what I'm doing, and that's important to me.
You know what you reminded me of there though, is if you've got the sort of the protection or the power from the people, it doesn't matter what, they can't touch me. And it reminded me of the one of my favourite movies is Gladiator.
Oh yeah.
And he stands in the room and he goes, you haven't got to win them, you got to win the people. When the people love you, they can do nothing to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that is your protection.
Yeah.
As long as the people love me and there's outrage for what I'm doing, I'm invincible. Yeah. But if there's no sort of protection from them, I feel a bit vulnerable. Your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, you know, and doing what we do, you know, it's very easy to feel very vulnerable. And so, yeah, having something like that just reiterated to me, it's like, you're still protected. There's still people out there who care enough about you that if it was all to go tipped up, that you wouldn't be on your own. And that is something that sits at the back of my mind very much so, you know. And the cannabis community, you know, my close-knit friends that I have in the cannabis community are amazing. You know, they'll get in touch with me and make sure I'm all right. And likewise, you know, we're all kind of doing our separate things, but still for the same goal. But yeah, it's, it was really lovely. And I did jump the gun a little bit. I posted it and Mike was like, you've jumped the gun a little bit. I should have warned you, but can you just take that down? I was like, I can, but 15,000 people have already seen it. I'm really sorry. Like I was just so excited. Yeah. I was so excited to be like, oh my God, that was just, it was lovely. It really was lovely.
So what does it mean to be an activist? Is there different things activists can be? Is it being doing what you can do? Is that if you got to do something very specific to be an activist? What does it mean for somebody who wants to fight?
I think an activist is just someone who's active about the thing that they care about. That's it. And however you're active is your form of activism. Again, it's when there's no one size fits all. You know, some people are activists like Phil Monk, the things that he's doing with the WTU. Some people are activists like that. They do what they can. I'm an activist. I would say that I'm an activist at grassroots because I'm helping the people who are sick, and that's it. And they're the ones right at the very bottom. They're the ones that are completely forgotten about. And the ones that are downtrodden and, you know, they're not the suits. They're not going to make money from this. They're the ones who are desperate and have been let down by the current system. And they're the ones that, you know, I'm like, well, I'll help these people down here. And that's where my activism is with grassroots. Your activism can be whatever you want it to be. You know, whether you get involved with other organisations to try and bring about more permanent change, like writing legislation and things like that, which there are other people within the community doing that. Simpa does a great job of, you know, writing some amazing pieces and getting information, education out there and other aspects. But all of us are activists, but we all are just active in our different ways. But with that brings together a massive community of a load of activists who are all, because at the end of the day, our end goal is the same. We all want cannabis to be accessible to everybody in the form that they want to have it in. And have full autonomy over our bodies and not have some governing body saying, no, you can't, yes, you can, you know, because wherever there's prohibition, there's always going to be an unregulated market to serve that, you know. So we can have cannabis, but under 20% THC. Fine, there's going to be a black market for 22% THC. It's going to be there. So just give us it's not even what we want, it's what we deserve and what we have a right to.
Especially with... There might be arguments, and I don't get involved in the other arguments with regards to other drugs and the medicinal effects of them. Mushrooms interest me a little bit because I've seen or heard about the effects of certain mushrooms with people at the end of life, and they go from shitting themselves, terrified, anxiety, to acceptance. Yeah. And in cases where there is no cure or there's nothing that can be done, they accept it, which is the best that you could hope for them. That's mushrooms, and they're illegal. So mushrooms are quite interesting to me medicinally. Cannabis is interesting to me because it's a plant, and everybody that feels the way we feel will think if you plant a seed in the ground and it gets water and sunlight, it produces. There's no... With other drugs, there's a lot of chemical alterations have got to go on. You can maybe think, well, there's the chemical alterations that go on. That just grows, and has done it a natural part of the earth. Should we be able to consume anything that grows naturally on the earth? Yeah. It should be our decision, shouldn't it?
I want to see it like tomatoes. Like, you know, with a tomato, if I want to grow tomatoes in my house, I can. If I want to eat them, I can. If I want to turn those into jam and sell them on a market, someone needs to come around and make sure my kitchen's clean. And absolutely they should. So whilst I'm consuming cannabis in my own home, with hurting nobody else, growing my own, consuming my own, leave me alone. However, if I want to start selling that, please, there needs to be regulations. There has to be, to make sure that people aren't hurting each other. Because as soon as there's a third party gets involved, we need to make sure that regulations are met so that there is equality there. And so, I just want to see it like tomatoes. With what we have at the moment is just absolutely insane, and it makes no sense. And, you know, we've got people, like say, we were talking earlier about, you know, the hoodies and the suits and things like that. And it's like, so we've got the suits making money while the hoodies are still in prison for doing exactly what they're doing, because they've got a suit on, they can make money out of it. And they have this, you know, they get out of jail free. They're not, but we've still got people. So again, it goes back to licensing. So if it's a licensing issue, why on earth are we letting people die and suffer over a licensing issue? If it doesn't have any medicinal benefit and it genuinely has really harmful side effects that we need to take into consideration, then absolutely, let's look at this. But we all know it doesn't. So stop it.
Where's the people coming with the scientific articles that say, actually, we've now discovered it does this, and this?
Well, they try, like David Nutt, you know, Professor David Nutt, who used to be a drugs advisor for the government. He came out and said, actually, cannabis is this. They went, sacked.
I love that man. I've been to a few of his
he's
talks.
wonderful, isn't he?
I need to get him on the podcast, actually.
He would be brilliant.
Yeah, and we could just go for another 3-hour marathon session. Because he talks about mushrooms and all medicinal drugs, doesn't he? So, yeah. David, if you're ever listening, we need to get you on.
I would. That's one I would love to listen to, because he's an amazing man who, again, has put his head above the parapet, regardless of what it was regardless of the loss to himself. He knew that it was right and just to talk the truth.
Yeah.
And he lost his job and they, you know, tried to discredit him in a lot of ways. And yet he still, you know, goes forward because the truth is the truth is the truth. No
and
matter.
will always come out.
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened with this picture? I can see you being marched away outside the Houses of Parliament. You had these lovely silver bracelets on. Were they
nice.
Tiffany's or?
I wish.
Where were they from?
Yeah, Her Majesty's silverware, I think it was it? Yeah, that was an interesting day. It was the UPA's, I think MP Paul Flynn, rest his soul, bless him, another guy who tried really hard to fight for us. He was having, I think, the second reading of there's been second reading, third reading. Where's that now? What's happened with that? Nothing. Oh yeah, it's all gone because you know. And but yeah, that we were having a kind of a protest outside, and yeah, obviously I was with Jeff, and Jeff got arrested, and so I took it upon myself because Jeff got arrested around the corner and kind of got taken off, and I thought, well, no one knows this is happening, so really I should go and tell everybody what's happening. So I went around the corner to where the protest was, and everyone was gathered, and I kind of got the megaphone and I kind of said, Jeff's been arrested, you know, an activist has been arrested. This isn't this here what you're fighting for is for cannabis, and yet someone's now just been arrested. So, and that was it. Everyone got up and was like, we need to go around the corner. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of people. I wasn't quite, this is not what I was expecting. But you know, the people that came down, there was no aggression on our side at all. You know, there was people that were like, let him go, and you know, cannabis is a medicine, and getting, you know, with the police. And then the van went off, and it was fine. And there was a few people, and I was like, look, just, you know, what's done is done now. He's gone. Let's just go back to the protest. There's no point carrying on. The police aren't the ones to blame. They're just enforcing what they're enforcing. So I was turning around to go and walk back to the protest quite happily. And as I went round the corner, I went and I looked over, and there was a group of about 8 coppers. And one of them went, that's her. I saw that's her. And I just went, oh. It's like, I'm going this way. I'm definitely going, I'm going to keep going this way. And so I was walking this way, and from behind, they jumped me from behind. Yeah. My phone went flying. It's like, stop resisting. I was like, what? And I was like this going, I'm not giving him a wrist. I said, what are you arresting me for? We'll tell you in a minute. No, you won't. You'll tell me now, you know, stop resisting. I was like, and I'm screaming, like, where's my phone? Because I see my phone go over there, and that's it. Someone's picked my phone up. And I'm like, where's my phone? I need my phone. Like, my kids are here somewhere, you know. And, so they eventually managed to arrest me and frog marched me off to the van. And I'm just thinking, oh God, I've got a load of weed in my bag. I'm like, oh, this is just the beginning of my problems now. This is just
what was the hair colour when this happened?
Oh, it was pink.
Was it?
Yeah. So of course I'd stick out like a sore thumb, you know. It's like, it's all great if, you know, someone needs to see me from the side of a room. Oh, there she is. But the police can also go, there she is. It's like, oh,
the one pink dot just both.
That's it. We try to walk away inconspicuously with dressed like a suffragette, you know, with a big sash on that says weeds, not words. And so they got me in. I mean, it was interesting because I figured, I sat there and I thought, well, I'm going to the police station now. This is interesting. I'm handcuffed in the back of a van. This is happening. Okay, well, you've got a few ways you can deal with this. You can either be hysterical, or you can just use this to your advantage. So I figured that I'd really just kind of burn their ears off with everything that I knew. So I made sure that I just told everyone that would listen everything that I knew about cannabis. And I suppose I made a bit of a joke about it, really. I got down to the police station, and they had the arresting officer, the sergeant behind the desk, and I'm stood there, and there's loads of people sat around all with their handcuffs and that. And I've got my handcuffs, dressed as a suffragette. And I was like, do you like my outfit then? And it was like, yeah, what you come out? I was like, a suffragette. And it's like, right, why? It's like, well, because 100 years ago, you know, I could walk into a pharmacy and I could get my kid cannabis, but I couldn't vote. I can vote now, but now I've been nicked for cannabis. So it's a bit funny, isn't it, really? Like, you know, like, okay, you don't really know what to do with you. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to make sure you never forget me.
And make sure how much of a problem I am.
Yeah, and I'm going to make sure that you listen and you hear everything, because you are going to understand how bloody ridiculous this is by the time that I've left. And they didn't lock me in a cell. They kind of left me with everybody else. So I just talking and talking. And then they did get me in an interview room, and they start chatting away to me and stuff. And I was just like, just told them my story. I said, this is the story of my son. This is why I do what I do. And, you know, and this is why I won't stop. And So yeah, I think it was in there about 7 hours or something like that. But I remember when they'd been through my bag, obviously, and I had 2 Paxes. One wasn't even mine. I was gutted. 2 Paxes. They put the 2 packs out on the table, and they had 1.5 joints. One was not touched, one was a half. And then I had a CBD lip balm.
Yeah.
And I had some seeds, 2 seeds that someone had given me. Right. And he gets them all out, and he's sort of looking at me like he's really proud of his find, his treasure. You know, I'm like, okay. And he said, yeah, we'll be having some fun with this later. And I went, really? I says, if you lot can have fun from what, 1.5 joints and a bit of like burnt. I said, you need to get out more. I said, you lot really need to get out more if this is going to get your rocks off.
I just hope it wasn't about the CBD balm they were going to have some fun with.
Well, they didn't want to give it back to me, you know. They were arguing with me not giving it back to me. They were arguing. I was like, it's CBD balm. And they were like, yeah, but you know, and I was like, it's CBD balm. There's nothing illegal in there. And as I actually said to coppers, I went, don't think that we don't know that's what you do with most of the drugs that you confiscate. We know what you do with them. We know that you take them for yourself. And they were like, you know, and I was like, oh. But
I might say something a little bit like unpopular here, but I hope anyway. This is a hope sort of statement. I hope that most people who become police want to do good. Yeah. I genuinely hope that. I know that there's in it, but in every walk of life, there's people who want to take advantage of these powers. I hope that maybe if we can convince the ones who genuinely want to do good, that they'll turn around to the people above them and their superiors will turn around and go, you know what, we're arresting people for a plant. All that time that we've had to spend on that, we could then focus on rapists, murderers,
real criminals,
paedophiles
that are hurting people.
Yeah. And like, how much more time, how much more people could we get if we didn't have to focus on this? That's where I hope it goes. I hope the activism changes the people who are in power on the front line, the police, to turn around to their superiors and go, we're wasting our time. And I know that this goes on. They would turn around and go, 2 paedophiles walk there because there was not enough manpower to get the evidence to put them away. If we didn't have to spend time doing this, we could have got them. And I hope that comes out. I think that could be a good way for a change to happen.
I think education within the police force as well, they don't even understand half the time, because when I sat in Charing Cross with these police officers, I said, do you know who the real victims of this crime are? You know, I said, it's the people that just want to help themselves and be left alone. And I explained to them, I said, did you know that across this country, there are people who are growing medicinally for themselves who get found by gangs. The gangs put their doors through. The gangs take their plants because they've worked out when their grow is about to come down. They steal everything and they say, you grow for us now. And I said, where's their recourse? Who can they go to? They can't go to the police and say, this lot have just come through my door and now I'm in a gang. They can't. I said, and the cop was like, what, that goes on? I was like, yeah, a lot. Older people, vulnerable people who are sick. And I said, these gangs, I don't want drug dealing gangs on the streets, either, be it cannabis, cocaine, heroin, whatever. I don't want gangs in charge of anything like that, because they don't care. It's all about the money. They're not bothered who they hurt. And so, you know, educating the cop was like, we didn't know that happened, you know. And I even said it to the chief of police. It was Mike Barton at the time when I was in Parliament, and I was talking in front of all these MPs and stuff. And I stood up and I introduced Darren as illegally alive. And the chief of police said, what do you mean illegally alive? And I said, well, because he takes cannabis every day. And so that makes him a criminal just for staying alive. And I told a bit of the story. And I said what I do now. And I said, look, these people are going to continue to come to me because I've made myself a bit of a beacon, whether I intended to or not, but that's what's happened. I said, these people are going to keep coming to me. Now, I have the ability to help these people. If I don't, and I can, I'm a monster, and I'm not a monster. I said, so either you stop arresting people for trying to help themselves, or you go some way to try and make sure that I don't have to do what I'm doing and they can get the help, the true help, where they need to get it from a doctor. And I said, you know, you're either going to have to arrest me or do that. And he was like, no one's going to arrest you. And I said, that's been written down. I'll keep you to that, you know. Yeah. But the educator, you know, I went on to tell him further about what's actually happening with gangs and things, and they don't know. They really honestly think, some of them just think it's cannabis plant, it's illegal, so therefore, you know, we're just doing our job, we're just enforcing. But a lot of police officers, I mean, I've got a lot of police officer friends. Many people don't know this, but I got in the police force twice. So I was nearly a copper twice. Yeah. Once in the Metropolitan Police and then another time in Norfolk Constabulary. And it was just circumstance that I didn't end up going through with it.
Yeah.
which would have been funny, really, wouldn't it? I had done.
Because you'd have still had to save your son.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you'd have still done the same thing.
And I'd have still done the same thing. And, you know, and I was one of those people that I just wanted to do good. And I thought that I could change the system from the inside. But sadly, it's going to take a lot to change the system from the inside, because the system, unfortunately, has become very toxic. And that, including in our prison service and our police service and everything, it's again been run like a business, much like the NHS. So it's not about people, it's about profit.
Yeah. You get groupthink as well. That's the problem. If you've got one individual, you could have gone in there and tried to make change. Groupthink would have just drowned you right out though, and made you maybe a victim. You might have targeted you, kicked you out. It's with groupthink, it's a very big psychological pressure that happens naturally. So I think it would be very difficult to do something like that. I think you're doing a much better job.
Thank you.
On the outside.
I try. But one thing from the arrest in Charing Cross is that by the time we went to leave, the police were like, "Would you come back and like do an education thing for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, if you want." Never took me out. Never kind of went any further. But they were so interested. They were really genuinely interested. And I mean, a lot of constabularies in the country, you know, it happened with Durham originally with Ron Hogg, another one, God rest his soul, who is not here anymore fighting our corner, who, you know, said we are no longer targeting small time cannabis growers because I think that the money, it was something like £700,000 to get a bust going, because you have to watch that person. You can't just walk in their house. You have to get a warrant, and that comes with a lot of surveillance. So the manpower, the man hours it takes to get one grow busted is £700,000. And they know that the bigger operations within 72 hours are back up again. So 700 grand every 3 days. The police the police force cannot afford that, and neither should they. And like you say, there are many now constabularies that are turning around going, doing this because you cut our budget by 23% last year, 22% by this year. We have less officers, 20,000 less officers on the street, and you expect us to go chasing people for a plant when we've got people who are actually really hurting people. And so there is a big change even within the police. You know, a lot of my police officer friends are like, obviously I can't condone what you're doing, but you know, keep doing it. And we never have an issue with cannabis consumers. They're not the ones that fight us and spit at us and hate us. They're by and large quite amicable people who just chill out, who just leave me alone, like, you know. So, but absolutely, the bigger gangs who are using slavery, who are stealing electricity, who are doing all those things, then yeah, absolutely, I don't want those people like on the streets either, because there's criminal activity that does have a victim. But cannabis in itself, when you're growing it yourself, is a victimless crime. So no victim, no crime. You know?
That should have been the title of the song. No woman, no crime, no victim, no crime.
Well, you know, we've it's funny you should say that, because a couple of years ago, and this is still another thing we're trying to talk about, is myself and Jeanette Clements, who I worked very closely with, still very, very close friend of mine. We tried to create a CANNA choir because she used to manage bands. Her dad used to manage Black Sabbath, and she's a really good singer. And I've got a bit of a voice. And so she was like, is that
a safe thing to say on a podcast with a microphone in front of you?
I've never sung in public, so it's not going to happen. But on my IGTV, there's a few where I've got a bit brave and sat in my car. But she was like, we need to have a CANNA choir, and we need to sing like cannabis-based songs, maybe dressed as suffragettes, and we go and stand in the streets and sing, you know. And so our mate Gags Morgan actually took No Woman, No Cry and turned it into No Victim, No Crime. And we've got this he's adapted all the words, so we've already got it. We just need to get the CANNA choir together and like get in a studio.
Get it released, get it onto Spotify.
I'd love to. It's another one of these things that we've got all these little ideas that have been bouncing around for so many years, and it's just like we're just all so busy that nothing. Every now and again, one of the seeds that we plant will pop up into a flower, and yes, but there's so many seeds that we've kind of planted that are just still sitting there going.
It's just a bit of water, a bit of love and attention, and it'll come to it.
A bit of focus. And
talking about focus, how do you see the movement going overall?
Oh, it's a difficult one because I think the more it becomes, like I said earlier, you know, it's the cat's out of the bag. We all know that cannabis works and works very well and better than lots of other things that are available. So when that happens, that they are going to be the powers that be that are going to be grasping and frantically trying to grasp control over this. Like, my concern is I'm worried it's going to turn into Canada or America, where we've got the MedMen, you know, the Starbucks of cannabis, where nobody else, the small small mums and pops grows can't do anything because they can't afford the $150,000 licensing fee that's all of a sudden come in from nowhere. So that leaves it really open to only the big people that have the big money. So then therefore you're going to get your McDonald's and your Starbucks and everyone else is going to go swinging. That's my concern. And that's my concern with a lot of interest from a lot of corporations and more, because like you, I'm very protective. I feel such a deep protection over, I call the cannabis plant her, I have a deep protection of her, and I feel very, I don't want people who are just in it for the money coming in and at the green rush and just seeing it as something to make money from, because it's more than that. It's more spiritual than that. It's deeper than that. It's more than just something to be made money from. And sadly, as soon as commercialism comes in and corporations get involved, that's what it's turned into. Business plans, business models. How do we get the most out of this plant? It's like, and it frustrates me, because as much as I want there to be an industry, and I think there is room for an industry, there is room for coffee shops. There is room for people who do grow and sell, because like with beer, not everyone wants to home brew themselves. There's always going to be people like myself. I don't really have the time or the ability to grow myself. So, I would love to be able to go somewhere where I know exactly what it is. It's clean. The regulations are there. And I'm not just putting money into McDonald's pocket. I'm putting money into somebody who's had this business in their family for the last 40 years. And they really, truly love the plant as much as I do. Yeah. If it all comes to fruition as a way, I'd love to see it with cannabis clubs and dispensaries and things. That I would love to see, again, it will be the same thing as it was when Tesco started to take over. You had to get back on the high street. We want the high street stores, and high street stores just gone. And now we've got high streets that are ghost towns because you've got a massive Tesco's and a Morrison's over there. And I don't want to see the same happen to cannabis. I really don't. But I fear that it's a moving train that I don't know how we're going to stop it. Seeing all these industries like Aurora and Tilray and things like that come over from Canada, and you just can't help but think, like, just keep your grubby hands off, will you please? But I know that in order for it to become successful, there has to be money behind it. But it's, where's the money coming from? What's the money? What's the agenda behind it? Where's your passion with cannabis? What is it that's driving you to do this with cannabis? And so, it's that protective mum thing over the plant. And I'm worried that, but
So I don't know a lot about it, or I don't profess to make really amazing insights, but the way I think I'd like to see it go is, I think we have to choose our partners carefully. The activists and the people are saying, no, we just need to keep it the way it's always been. If you do the same things, you'll never have any change.
Exactly.
So it'll always be the way it is today. Then you've got the people who will just want to come in and just make money. And I don't care about the end product. I don't care about the product or the people. It's about my share price and going up or down. It's got to meet somewhere in the middle. We've got to get the activists and the people who, they'll still want to care about the share price and making money, but just partner with companies or people that are like, listen, our goal is to make money. We have shareholders to keep happy. However, the way we're going to make money is by making the best quality cannabis, by employing the most knowledgeable people who, ironically, would have been doing it illegally for the last 20 years.
Those with criminal records for it.
Let's get the CVs for the people that have gone to jail for it. And I think that's where we might make some inroads. The people, there's always going to be the corporations. The change will come because there's big money behind it. That's where I think the change might come.
It would be good if it could. I think because we need, we can't just take the paradigms and the systems that we've applied to everything else, like the pharmaceutical industry and things like that. We've got a chance now to do things differently, where if we can try and convince these people who are just all see the money, the shareholders, if we can convince them that there is more than enough for everybody, you don't have to be so greedy, and we can help people and make you money at the same time. Can we please do something different? Can we please not shit all over everybody just so you can make me, let's find a way where we all win. Come on, that's better for an all-round long game situation, isn't it? And trying to find these people who are altruistic with their money, who do have some kind of heart when it comes to cannabis. It's finding those right people that you say, it's getting the right partnerships. And so finding those people, there are a few out there who are trying really hard to do the right thing, sadly, it looks like they have a lot of obstacles put in their way because they don't know the right people. They're not shaking the right hands. And that, again, stop it. You know.
What do you think, really quickly, what do you think of like the wine model? And that's going back to, look at the amount of wine bottles on the shelves in every shop, the amount of vineyards. So it's not like 3 people, 3 corporations could own this and supply everyone. There's literally thousands of different bottles of wine, from your £2 line Brinis to your £5 wines, the £10 wines, 15, 20, 50, £100,000 wines. Like, is the wine model something that you...
I had never thought of it like that before, actually. But yeah, I mean, because obviously still we have, you know, smaller vineyards that make very bespoke wine, or very, you know, and it would be the same. You'd pay extra for getting that level of care, which you do with wine. You pay more for a wine that's come from a smaller place. So they've been doing it for longer, and as you should, because they've built up the knowledge, and so they should be rewarded for that. So yeah, having a model like that, as long as it depends, again, obviously the regulations and things that people are going to put upon it. Where is it going to be a case of, like I say, 20% THC, things like that? It's got to be. I think if they're going to do anything, they've got to allow it in all of its forms, and not be so scared that, oh, well, if we have people growing their own, then we're never going to make money out of it. Of course you will. Like I said, there's always going to be people that don't want to grow their own. My dad brewed his own wine. He said it tastes like vinegar. And my dad's like a perfectionist. He'd have followed the rules. He'd have done everything. My nan was like an amazing winemaker, but she had 40, 50 years experience. Yeah. And she went and bought her own wine. She's like, mine's great, but you only have a little bit of it. Something different. Yeah. You know.
Her wine would get you pissed. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes I want to drink a proper bottle of wine and feel okay. Drink a glass of my wine, you're done for the night. That's it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if they were allowed to grow their own, they would still go to the shops to experience something else. Yeah, there is more than enough. There is abundance out there, and I think that's what I want people to remember, especially those that are very figured money driven. It's like, there's more than enough for all of us. You know, let us that can't afford it, let us grow our own. Let us do that, because we're not gonna affect your bank balance over there. I promise you. You know, little old lady over there who's grown a couple of plants for our arthritis, she ain't no threat to the pharmaceutical. the big. You know, she's no threat to your Aurora. Stop. You know, there's no need for it. But I get it. You know, they're in it. They're very different thinking people. They've got to where they are because they're corporate minded. That's the only reason why they're as successful as they are. So they're going to use that model to continue being successful. Of course they are, but that model isn't good for people, the people at the bottom, and they're the ones I'm worried about, because I'm one of them. Yeah, you know, I'm not sat around a massive table with loads of people chucking investment at me and talking big figures and numbers at me. I'm, by and large, like I say earlier, I'm pretty much doing everything on my own, because what I mainly do is illegal, and so that turns a lot of people off, you know. And then it's, so me getting backing from any investor or anybody who's legal is very nigh on impossible. And would I want it? Probably not anyway. Yeah. You know, I'd much rather do what I do on my own and know that it was me that got me there. But yeah, the way it's going, I don't know which way it's going to go. And I guess, well, that's it. Only time will tell. That's it. Well, all we can do. I mean, I've said this to a lot of people. You know, people who are angry at the system and they try and fight the system. I was like, there's no point. The system has been entrenched for a very long time, hundreds of years, and they are well equipped with everything they need to completely squash us if they want to. So what we have to do is, rather than wasting our energy trying to fight them, we have to spend our energies building something better, so that when their system crumbles, because we take ourselves out of their system, because it's the only way their system will crumble is we don't rely on it anymore. Yeah. While we're going to them for our medicine and our food and our water and everything that we need to survive, we are keeping that system going. So we have to take ourselves out of the system and look after ourselves. And once we do that and we've built a better system, naturally it will take over. There's no fighting. We don't need to fight them. We need to just work together to build something better, so that theirs naturally comes obsolete. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Getting people to do that is harder than than it sounds, though, you know. But yeah. Right. We're gonna do 3 bullet points. Okay. Hemp and CBD Expo. You're a key speaker at the event. How do you feel it went? I think the last one didn't go as well as the other ones, and whether that's because oversaturation of the market, because all of a sudden there was millions of hemp and CBD expos. There was just loads of them popping up. Yeah. You know, I was hearing, "Oh, are you at this expo?" I'm going, "What expo?" They're like, "Oh, such and such." I'm like, "No, never heard of it." You know, there was loads of them. So I think
when it's first started, it was a really good concept, but I think it's just, like you say, it's been oversaturated. Too many people are now trying to do exactly the same thing.
My problem with it was we went as a media company, NPK Media went, and we filmed the event, and I thought it was great. There was lots of stands, and this was amazing. I thought this could be the start, and it just became at the end of the weekend. I just saw more and more people in suits, less and less people dressed like me. I thought, what is this really? Is this about change, or is this about just cashing in? Yeah. Is this event about change, or is it about cashing in? I don't have the answer to it.
Yeah.
I know what I feel it was, but if there's going to be more expos, I think it needs to be more about the change and include the people that don't try and push the people out that have made you get to this point, and try and bring the people in to make you money.
We need to celebrate those people that we've built the back of.
The suits are needed, but just as much as the suits are needed, the people who built this industry are needed.
Exactly, and we saw the same in America, people 20, 30 years who'd been blood, sweat and tears, and then that's it. The corporations came in with their suits and they were completely downtrodden. It's off their blood, sweat and tears that these corporations have managed to get where they are, and then they're completely forgotten about. And that's wrong. Like I say, we should be giving, when the jobs come about, we should be going into prison. Right, get everyone out of prison who's in there for cannabis. Right, what do you do? Oh, he had a massive grow. Right, I want to see him.
Yeah,
you know, rather than keep him out of the industry. It's like, what are you doing?
How successful were you?
Yeah. How many did you have going? And it building something to the detriment of other people or using them to further an agenda is not something that I will ever want to be part of. And I think I want to celebrate those people that have built this industry and who've been working in this industry for 30 plus years, when it was illegal, and you've got to reward
the sacrifices.
Them. Yeah, they've made the sacrifices years ago, years before you even knew what cannabis was, mate. And now you've all of a sudden seen a ching ching, it's a green rush over the, no, we need to remember, we mustn't forget those people
Everyone
that started
together.
this. Yeah.
July 2018, this caught my attention because it was the Fart Who meeting. What's the Fart Who meeting? What's all that about?
So Zoom bear with you, say Fart Who meeting. So that was, I can't remember what FAAT stands for now. Oh, it's terrible. It's a couple of years. A loss happened. I've breathed in and out since then and blinked a couple of times. It's like, so I was, it was in Geneva, and it was the World Health Organization were getting together to talk with the UN, about looking at cannabis and how we need to change it into more of a medicinal thing and change the kind of the status of it and things like that. And
invited?
I was invited to go and talk. I was the only UK representative.
That's
cool. It was pretty cool. It was like in Geneva, there was like Germans there and some Croatians and French people and some Americans there and stuff. And I was like, felt well at me. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I sat there, and really all I did was I told my story and said, and they were asking me questions about legislation in the UK, and they were laughing, not laughing at me, but they were like, "What? That's like that in the UK?" And you're like, "Yeah." They're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know," and because they were saying we're so much further ahead just in this way and that way, and in Germany we're so much further ahead, in Croatia and things.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
I've been to Switzerland.
Yeah. So so Switzerland. I lived in Switzerland for a little while.
And you came back?
Yeah, I did.
Switzerland is like an amazing country.
Yeah, it's a bit different when you live there, though.
Yeah. I probably is. Yeah. I had a nice 5 days there.
It's a bit different when you live there. It's a very strange country because I was there with the whole thinking of like, wow, this country's amazing. Like, there's so much freedom. And so, like, for instance, it's a little bit silly, but I'm walking down the road and there's a box with newspapers in, with a clear fronted screen on it, and usually you'd put your money in and it would release a catch and you'd open it, you get your newspaper out, you shut it again. Well, this was just flapping. You didn't have to pay. You did have to pay, but it was just flapping. There was no lock. And I was like, if that was in England somewhere, those newspapers would be everywhere. They'd be all over the floor. They'd be, people would be... And I was like, how come no one's stealing the newspapers? I was like, there's a lot of trust here. And he went, no, there's cameras everywhere, like literally everywhere. I said, we're watched, and they will put you in prison for stealing a newspaper. Might only be for a day, but they'll do it. Yeah. And when you go to prison in Switzerland, when you come out, you have to pay to reimburse them for the money they've spent on you while you're in prison. So you come out in debt. Yeah, so you come out in debt as well.
Well, it's a good model for people who deserve
it. Yeah, exactly.
Not for people that don't.
Yeah,
it's just another kick in the teeth.
Exactly. It's just what I owe you 28 grand for boarding. Like, I didn't ask to be put there, But yeah. So I was like, oh, what a free country. Oh no, what a oh no, okay, it's because they're watched, it's Big Brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that kind of takes away the magic.
Yeah.
But the CBD thing I saw there absolutely intrigued me. The fact that they virtually decriminalised, kind of, because the way they done it was that, so CBD flower is legal in Switzerland. So everybody started smoking CBD flower, and you could get it from any tobacconist, and you're walking down the road and it's like, okay, so people are smoking CBD flower everywhere. Of course, well, it smells and looks the same as normal cannabis. So the police were busting people and taking them in, and they were testing their weeds, and of course, tests cost money. And every time they were testing, it just kept coming back. This is CBD, this is CBD. So the top police people were like, look, it's costing us too much money in tests. If you, as a police department, you want to test anyone, you have to pay for it yourself. It's not coming out of the big budget anymore. So, of course, individual constabularies or whatever they're called over there were like, we
Stopped overnight.
Let's stop testing people. So, of course, the Swiss people went, ha ha. So they just went bunning everywhere and smoking everywhere. And so, of course, they were like, oh, well, we can't have this because this is taking the piss. So they came out with 10 grams. So anything under 10 grams, they aren't going to test you. They aren't going to take you in. They're going to leave you alone because it's not worth it just in case it's CBD. Yeah. Anything above 10 grams, it's worth taking you in because if they do get you for THC, then it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, funny story. We were in Luke was with me, actually. We were filming at one of the big farms, Mankey Farm, CBD producer. And up until then, I'd never smoked or consumed CBD, pure CBD cannabis. I was like, I'm going to try this.
Nice.
So it was lovely, lots of tastes, and the farm was brilliant. It was with SANlight on top of them, just beautifully grown plants. So we've gone back to the Airbnb, mountains in the background. I'm like, I've got work to do. Like, we were up till late doing all the editing. I'm like, yeah, CBD weed is great. And then just get shades round, another one. You don't taste the difference. Half an hour later, I wasn't doing any work. Somehow it got mixed up, and I was just sat on a recliner like, who's put the extra bits in here? Do you know what I mean? It was a good night.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, it was a gorgeous country, and
it was
a good experience as well, having the CBD weed as well.
Yeah.
WTU, We the Undersigned. What's the movement? How do people support them? What's their main goal?
So I probably should know more about this, but Phil Monk has an idea to basically try and get the community together to try and take the government to court over like human rights access, to cannabis. And his idea was to find a solicitor who would do that. Someone who like a real earmark kind of, this would be history changing kind of, if we can get this to go to court. Found a solicitor, obviously managed to raise quite a bit of money for cannabis community. It was like nearly 12 grand, I think they raised. And of course, it hasn't really gone any further, sadly, because solicitors charge an awful lot of money. Yeah. And this is probably going to cost nigh on $1 million, maybe. I'm probably the wrong person to make any kind of guesses on how much, but bearing in mind how far it's got with the little amount of money so far, it just feels, and I feel I'm very sad for it because it's a great idea and it's a great concept, but trying to rely on the usually very sick, quite poor cannabis community to try and fund something like that, I think was almost a non-starter. Yeah. They would need to get money from investors who care, really, to really push this forward. But Phil keeps trying, and he's so articulate and he's very clever, and he has an amazing drive, even though he's very sick himself. He tries really, really hard to keep everything going. And again, being off Facebook, I'm really kind of out of the loop with everything that's going on. I just know that I support him wholeheartedly. I really do, and everybody that's involved in it. And I wish that I could do more, and I wish that there was something we could all do that would just get this going. Yeah. But it seems that the second you get a solicitor involved, that's it. Your money's gone.
Wouldn't it be great though? And I know that it would be used as a marketing ploy, and let them use it as a marketing ploy. But the big multi-million-pound companies that want people to buy their cannabis, or wherever this is around the globe, £1 million, and some of these companies have £1 million marketing budgets. How good would it be, even just as a marketing trick, to go, there you go, we the Undersigned, there's £1 million, go and have your fight. If it didn't do anything, they've still, that one company supported grassroots. Yeah. So then the community can look at that company and say, yeah, you are out to make a profit, but you actually do care. You've proved it.
Yeah.
And that £1 million would be probably one, if they wanted to make money, it would be one of the best ways to spend $1 million, because they've helped the grassroots. Everyone would see it. Whether it worked or whether it didn't would be down to WTU. And this company can say, we've tried to help. We just want to make this now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
that would be
work.
amazing if something like that could happen. It really would. And it's just, it's sad. It's a lot of money that's got to come from somewhere. And I say, trying to get it out of the community is, and people give as much as they can, but a lot of the time, these people are on benefits themselves. They're scraping. They can't even afford to, buy the cannabis they need to keep them well a lot of the time.
Never mind,
and it's,
donate.
Yeah, and it's sad, and like you say, it's such a shame that some solicitor didn't go, do you know what? I earn enough on everything else I do. In fact, I'll give you my time for nothing.
Yeah, I've been watching Suits recently. They call it pro bono.
Yeah, that's it. Pro
just
bono
do it
stuff.
for work. Yeah. Is that a UK?
Yeah, it is pro bono.
Word?
Yeah, that's what Phil was looking for. He was really looking for pro bono, but nobody would do it pro bono.
Yeah, money talks, unfortunately, doesn't it?
Sadly, because then you think, well, actually, you're saying you want to help the cannabis movement. How much are you helping by charging an awful lot of money? Because if you really wanted to help, you'd do it on your weekends.
Yeah.
Like we all have to do stuff on our weekends outside of our normal day-to-day job, because it means that much to us. It's sadly, I think with anyone who goes into this half-heartedly, cannabis just doesn't mean enough to them. They haven't had their son saved or their auntie saved or their mum, and until that happens, they're not invested enough because it doesn't mean enough to them. It's not everything
to you.
That's it.
Like, I know what my son means to me. And in a way, you've got your son and what cured him.
Mm-hmm.
So like that thing, correct me if I'm wrong, means equally as much to you as your son your sons do to you.
Yeah.
And I can see how it's invested you are.
Yeah. And I mean, this goes, we were talking earlier about, Dylan and the fact that I haven't lived with him for nearly 3 years. And that's something that not a lot of people know about me because it's my private life. But my youngest son, Dylan, understands, again, this is how much cannabis means to me, is I've literally, it is like one of my children. And I do feel as much of a protection over it. And in fact, sometimes I'm like, look at Dylan and I look at Darren and go, you two are right. Cannabis isn't. Cannabis needs my help more than you two do right now.
Yeah.
All these people that can't get access to what they need my help more than you do. And both of my children understand that they are almost second best to cannabis.
But they're okay with that.
They're okay with that because they understand it's a bigger picture. My youngest son, I heard him talking to someone not long ago and he was saying, yeah, but what my mum does is really, really important. And he says what my mum does and what she does with her time when she's not with me is really important. And he understands that this is literally my life, helping people and trying to get cannabis to be accepted as something that isn't to be frowned upon or scared of and things like that. And my end driving goal is that one day I don't have to do this and that the doctors and nurses can do what I do and then I can then go and live with my life with my children. And I can then prioritise my children, then become more important to me than cannabis because cannabis doesn't need my help so much anymore. That's what I'd love. Yeah.
Well, talking about that, your love for it, a little bit about you now. So you book a consultation on the website, and let me just lead up to this a little bit. A lot of people look for in their jobs meaning and meaning to life and the meaning to what they do. And all I'd say is I can easily see where the meaning comes from for you because you've used a cannabis to save your son, and that should mean the world to you. It does mean the world to you. If you could do that for one other family and educate them, help them so that one of them, mum, father, can save their son, you could just sit back then. I've that's me done. I've saved another person's life. Doctors get to experience it. Oh, doctors should get to experience that quite often, but that is like a big meaning. So leading on to that, you do consultations on your website, which is callieblackwell.co.uk.
Yeah, and on my Facebook page, because I do have an author, an official Facebook page, which I do still man. It's just my private page that I've taken off on Instagram and things like that. But I had, and I've been, I've been criticised for this, and that's fine because people don't live my life for me. People don't pay my bills for me. People don't have to run my car for me. And so, the criticism that I do take it on board. However, over the last 6 months and stuff, my workload has just increased massively, especially with COVID, because the NHS weren't giving treatment to people. People were walking in with stage 2 cancer that is usually very treatable on the NHS and being told you're under palliative care, there's nothing we can do because of COVID. And so I was getting a huge influx of people, like all of a sudden just my cancer treatment's been stopped. I've looked for alternatives. You've come up. Please help me. I'm desperate. It's like, geez. So I had a massive influx. And so I couldn't continue working the way I was working, which was I was literally answering messages at 3-4 o'clock in the morning because I felt so guilty because there were people, and I understand that desperation. That's the other thing. I'm not just someone who sells oil because I sell oil. I do this because I understand that desperation and that sheer kind of trying to find something that helps because nothing else has. And so I found myself, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm just working continuously, and I was just repeating myself. And my time, I just wasn't managing my time correctly. And so with the help of Jesse, actually, he's really kind of come in and taken me that was this ball of like that, just like blue ass fly, I didn't know what I was doing half the time. And he's come in and gone, just settle down and just, and so I've developed like a consultation process, I call it, where I sat for about 17 to 20 hours one day, and I just wrote a load of Q&As of questions that people always come to me with, because I'm sick of repeating myself. So I'm just going to write a massive Q&A, and I update that weekly with, if people come out with me with a new question, I'm like, oh, bloody hell, I haven't covered that one, right? Cover that one, So I put together this huge consultation process with all of the information really that I have, with links to other information where they can even learn how to grow their own, learn how to make their own. I'm not in this to monopolize that person and say, don't worry, I'll look after you forever. Just give me your money. I'm like, I'll help you now, but you really need to look after yourself, because you need to look after yourself. I want everybody, give a man a fish. I want everybody to be self-sustainable. And so I started doing what, I call consultations. And then I realized that people then wanted to ring me. People wanted to talk to me. And I was like, well, the second I talk to you and I just talk to you, I can't be messaging. I can't do anything else. So I need to start. And people were saying, you need to start charging for your time, Callie. And I'm like, I can't do it. Morally, I can't do it. And it got to a point where I was like, do you know what? Well, it's actually Jesse said to me, do you know how long you've been doing this? It's like nearly as long as a doctor trains. Yeah. You've been in this for 6.5 years. Plus you've got your 4 years previous experience of chemotherapy and cancers and the oncology world. You've been working a long time for this. You deserve to be rewarded for what you're doing and your time and your knowledge and your expertise. And it was really more of a lack of self-worth for me, is why I wasn't kind of charging for my time or getting anything. I was literally doing everything for nothing. And it was killing me. You can't live like that. I've been living like that for 6.5 years. I can't live like that anymore, Can't keep relying on people to put me up on their sofa. I have to start giving a bit back. And unfortunately, we all need money. So I developed the consultation process, and I don't charge everybody. If you can't afford it, then that's fine. You don't pay it. I will still help you. I'm not going to turn you away. And there's been a number of people who've just gone, I can't afford to talk to you. And I go, okay, then I'll talk to you for free. It's fine. Yeah. And I don't charge an exorbitant amount of money. I actually, if you took it down to my hourly rate on the amount of time I spend with an individual, I'm not even on minimum wage. I really am not. I've gone in with as much as I need, because I'm not a greedy person, and I really don't have, I don't drive a Mercedes. I don't have loads. I haven't, I'm wearing clothes that I've had for years that have been gifted to me, and so money isn't my driver, but I still need it to live.
The way I'd look at it is, if anyone criticizes you for doing this consultation, you'd say, okay, the alternative is I go and work a job to earn me money so I can help less people for free. Yeah. So how about I spend more time helping the people? The ones who can pay are paying me, so I don't have to do a job so I can help people. The alternative to not charging means I help less people. Yeah. So I imagine the criticism probably coming from people within the industry. So what would you rather me do? Yeah. Go and work in Tesco's or Ladbrokes or wherever it is you'd get a job, and I'm going to help 5 less people this week? Or would you like just me to help them and I'm going to get recompensed for it? Yeah. What would you do? Yeah.
And that's exactly what has been my response is like, I'm not charging nearly as much as some people within these clinics, to go and get a consultation. I'm not charging anywhere near as much as them. And, I put a little bit on the products that I help people with, and that's how I make a living so that I can continue to live and exactly that, I can continue to help people, because I've tried that, having a normal job thing. You know, I worked for a CBD company for about a year, 18 months, and it nearly killed me because, you know, I'd been on TV by this point. So I'm there for 8 hours a day filling capsules and syringes. And I'd go home straight away. I'd open my laptop and I'd be on that until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, shut that 2 hours kip up again at 7. And I did that for a year and it nearly killed me. Like physically nearly killed me. And I just thought, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing it. And so, you know, I've relied very much on people's generosity, and JJ put me up for a number of months. She looked after me, and you know, other people have done the same. And it just got to the point, it's like, I can't keep living like that. You know, it's not fair. It's not fair for everyone else to hold me up either. But it's almost like being an activist or something like that within this industry. People expect you to just be suffering so hard. Like if you're not really struggling, then you're not an activist. You know, if you're not eating beans and pot noodles every day and you're not living in a cardboard box, and you're not an activist. It's like, what? How does that? Because exactly like you say, I can help more people now, more effectively, more quickly, because actually I'm able to sleep at night because I've developed this thing where I've actually given myself hours. So I try not, I still do it. Jesse tells me off sometimes because still like, he'll go, "You're not working, are you?" It's like, it's 12 o'clock at night. "You're not working." I'll go, "No, no."
Slides laptop away.
Like, sorry. But, you know, I try really hard to set myself boundaries now. And I think that's what it is as well, is I've set boundaries with people and I've set boundaries with myself, because I can't keep wringing the arse out of myself, because you
won't be able to help people in the future.
I won't be able to help anybody.
You've got to look after number one first.
Exactly. So, yeah.
We're going to have to do a part 2 podcast because I literally skipped over. How many minutes have we got left on that there? 12 minutes left. Oh, that was a slow. I got a 15-minute flag. Were you just being
overcautious?
I like your word. I like you. So we've got 12 minutes left.
Brilliant.
Good. Because in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to talk about, as well as cannabis, Callie's all about looking after yourself as a person holistically, the food you eat, the water you drink, the exercise you take, everything. One of the things that we as a shop want to help you with is that people eating healthily. So organic foods, they still get organic foods. It's just a buzzword a lot of the time, and they're not maybe as healthy as just normal conventional stuff. But I tell you what is healthy: people who grow their own fruit, veg, herbs. Luke is a master chef. He loves it. He wants help growing fresh chives so he can chop at the bush and put them straight on. What we wanted to do for you and your listeners is put something together called the Callie Kits. Bit of a play on words, California, but it's the Callie Kits. It's the double L. So the shop has put together packages which uses organic nutrients, full organics. They can choose between BioBiz, which is the full premium organic range, or CANNA, which is the vegan organic range. I think a lot more of your listeners, people who follow you, will probably go for the vegan CANNA stuff. But we'll put together packages. They go live from Monday, which is Monday will be around the 8th of September, 7th of September. Yeah. So they'll go live from them. And if we've budgeted them, but not made the kit cheap and horrible kit, so it'll last you a long time. But it's in a good price range. And we'll also be throwing loads of goodies as well.
Fantastic.
So whatever they need. So if you do need that, that's Callie Kits. And we haven't put it on there, so you have to actually search for them. I don't want random people finding it or stumble across them. Yeah. I want this for people who genuinely want their own fruit and veg, want good kit for a cheap price. And that's just the Callie Kits. You have to search for it.
Thank you.
How do our listeners support you if they've been moved by the story? How would they support you? One, going by the book. That's not even supporting. That's just self-support. Because I love books. And
if you want to buy the book, please buy it from me. Don't buy it from Amazon, because I get 11p. I know everybody's face does that when I go, "Oh, you obviously wrote books." I've had so much criticism over the years from people who've accused me of using my son's story to make money, and I've gone, I get 11p a book. I didn't do it for the money, all right?
Where did he buy the book? Directly from you?
So you can get, I've got a box of them in my car, and I take them around and I send them out to people. So because I can get them at a bit of a discount, not heavy discount from my own publishers. So I get them at a bit of a discount. So I'm able to send them, with a signature. I can charge a tenner, and then I get a little bit of money out of that. So it's another way to kind of help me, pay my bills.
So we'll buy 10 of these books.
Okay.
And
Yay.
for the 10 people that message to the podcast saying that they love the podcast or any questions, then we'll send one out to them for free.
And I'll sign them all before as well.
Yeah,
Obviously, I
that'd
can't
be
sign them for
amazing.
individuals because I don't know who they are yet, but I can sign them with a little message inside.
That's
so they're all
amazing.
signed and
Because
stuff,
trust me, I'm an avid book reader and you'll have this done. If you like reading, you'll have this done in a week because I'm not messing it as a page turner.
Yeah.
How else would somebody support you?
So, I mean, really, because of the way that I, they do the consultations things now, and I do have a, small amount of money coming in. It's not really financial help that I need from people as such. It's I need people just to support what I'm doing,
The cause.
yeah, so that support is there for, again, if I do get busted, that the support is there for me in that respect, or the support is there really is just for cannabis. I want people, just tell everybody and don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to come out of the grow closet, talk to people and say, and I do it sometimes even when I'm walking down the road. I'll be standing in the post office or something and I'll hear somebody talking and I'll go, you want to look into cannabis for that, really? And they look at me and I go, no, seriously, just go home and Google it. Just go home and Google it. Just keep talking about it and don't be ashamed, because that's the best way that you can support me. Because long term, hopefully, the more support that comes for cannabis, the more support that comes for actual doctors and physicians doing what I do, which means that I don't have to do this anymore, which means that I can concentrate on me and my children and
life.
Yeah. And as much as this is my life and I love it, and I would be lost without it, I would really, really would be lost without helping. Helping people really does. It's what drives me.
You're like Batman. Batman doesn't want to be Batman forever. He wants Gotham to be able to look after itself, and then he can go away and enjoy.
I'll take that. Yeah, I do. And it's funny because I've had people say to me over the years, if you tell people to grow their own, that you're going to go out of business. And I was like, right, I'll stop you there. This is where you don't get me. I'm not in this for business. This is not my business. I want to go out of business in that respect, because if I'm out of business in that respect, it means that everybody's getting the help that they need. And that for me would be, you know. So I've got other ways that I can hopefully go on to make money and have my own pension fund and things like that. I don't want to continue to have to make money, albeit only a small amount, from sick people. I don't want to rely on those people in order to keep me going. I want to be able to rely on other people that don't need me, and the other people that, they just come to me because they want what I'm offering rather than they're at death's door. That I want those people to have access to cannabis right at the very beginning from their doctor in the ways that it's meant to be, not any watered down rubbish that's not really going to help them. I want them to have access to what I provide. Yeah. And the day that they can have access to what I provide, then I'll be so pleased. I'll be so pleased. I want to see everybody, because not only, the grow your own thing, even, growing your own vegetables and things like that. I'm always telling the people that come to me, you need to start looking at growing your own now. And they're like, oh, yeah,
even
I know.
for the psychological benefits.
Exactly that. The empowerment that comes from gardening.
Yeah.
The empowerment that comes from, I've seen it myself. I've got, I don't know how many people I've got now into growing their own and stuff, but then they come back to me and they send me pictures of their plants and they go, look. And the excitement that comes from that. And then the empowerment that comes from them creating their own medicine that's keeping them well and not having to rely on somebody else.
In control.
So empowering. Yeah.
Control.
Yeah.
And
that's and that's what I want people to be, in control of themselves and empowered to look after themselves and those around them.
Yeah.
Their friends and family. Yeah.
I love you.
Aww.
In an
too,
activism way.
I love you too.
And I love
really.
what you do.
You.
I love how passionate you are for it. And that is truly why I genuinely, this could have gone on for another 3 hours. I could have gone into so much more depth on everything. But I think the cameras dictate how long we can do this podcast
I've had enough.
Yeah,
go.
they're overheated. But thank you very much for coming
Thank you.
on, sharing the story. Thank you very much for everything that you do as well for the community.
Thank you for giving me a chance to kind of, put some questions to bed, because I know around the community there's a little bit of, oh, she's charging for consultations. Oh, she's now turned into corporate. Oh, she's doing this. Like, no, I haven't. I really haven't.
I'd love those people to come on and tell me what you've done.
Yeah.
And what have you sacrificed?
Or what would you do in my position?
Yeah.
Getting to the point where I physically couldn't continue anymore, yet I still needed to help people. I've developed a way by myself to help more efficiently and effectively, and we all win.
That's it.
Everyone's a winner. And so,
Perfect.
proud myself.
www.callieblackwell.co.uk. Send your messages in. We've got 10 books for the first 10 people. And And follow Callie. Are you following your Instagram?
So Instagram is _cannabis_activist.
Perfect.
And then on Facebook, just Callie Blackwell, and you'll find me. You'll find my main page on there. And anybody who wants to get in contact with me, I do have an automated response that comes up that says I very rarely look at these messages, and I don't on Facebook. I direct everybody to my phone number. So you message that, you'll get given my phone number, and then you'll receive a message from Jesse explaining who he is and explaining how I work. And then we go from there, and then you're in the do what I can.
Perfect. Thank you once again.
Welcome.
Definitely have you back on to do part 2 and 3 and 4.
I'll just be here all the time.
We've got a lot more to discuss for the future, haven't we?
Absolutely.
For everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your probably evening by now. But thank you very much for tuning in, listening, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.